Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the wonderful lunch. We want to show our gratitude and thank all the many volunteers, compassionate volunteers that helped prepare, set up, serve, clean up after a wonderful lunch. This afternoon, for the next half hour, we're going to turn our attention to the legacy of the Sangha. And to present this next session, let's welcome back Dharma Master Hung Shin.
Those of you who were here this morning, we spent the time from 8 o'clock until 10:30 looking backwards. We divided up the time into decades, and we heard about Shifu's first arrival on the shores, and then how through the decades up into, as we heard, the millennium generation, the internet generation, the 2000s, how Shifu first arrived. And this afternoon, we're going to move into those legacies that we talked about. Now, this is something that we disciples came up with, looking back. Shifu did not say, this is my legacy
of this or that. In fact, we are looking at the 50 years of teachings and thinking that these are the things that stand out, the things that Shifu emphasized, and the places where he wants us to continue, based on what he taught us over and over and over again. So those were indeed, just to say it again for folks who were not with us this morning, they were establishing the Sangha, which includes the inner experience of meeting a good and wise advisor and then transforming ourselves, changing. And then the outer experience of that, which is the buildings, the schools, the sutras, the programs, the things with form. So there's the formless teaching and the formless and the formed teaching. The second legacy is lecturing on sutras, translating those sutras, and then distributing what we translate. The third is promoting education, and our teacher was a tireless educator, from elementary school, and now we even have daycare, up to Dharma Realm Buddhist University. So that's the education legacy. And the fourth is interfaith conversation, learning to become good religious neighbors. And how do we, in a pluralistic, multi-faith nation like America, North America, how do we introduce the Dharma? Since we are the new kid on the block, the last religion in the door, how do we introduce ourselves to avoid fighting, contention, or setting up sects and ideas? So these are the legacies, and this is our time to study those. And as Brian said, we're going to introduce Dharma Master Hung Liang, who has put in a lot of work on thinking about the legacy, to introduce to not only to other religions, but also intra-Buddhist. What is different about the way Master Hsuan brought the Sangha to America? And as I was thinking today about what we got, let's say, from Master Hsuan, you heard this morning how at Gold Mountain Monastery, he not only lectured on the Shurangama Sutra, but he also cooked for the hippies who straggled into the Buddhist lecture hall and looking for meditation and enlightenment, you know. And Master Hua's taught us how to cook by doing it himself. He wrote the characters on the board of the sutra that he lectured, and if there was no one there to translate, he translated for himself. So Master Hua was definitely a hands-on, do-it-yourself, seat-of-the-pants pioneer. And what came up to my mind were he introduced us to the entirety of the Buddha Dharma, but I think more importantly, he introduced us to the entirety of ourselves. It was called 学佛做人，人道进佛道场. You study from the Buddha by learning to be a better person. When the path to humanity is perfected, Buddhahood accomplishes itself. There is no other Buddhahood beyond the perfection of this human share. So in the process of that, we learned about vows, we learned about bodhisattvas, we learned about sutras, we learned about virtue, filiality, guanyin, vegetarians' compassion, and ultimately the greatest gift. Master Hsuan taught us the value of recognizing and coming to grips with our own habits and faults. In the changing, in the joyful changing of those, indeed is the quickest approach to wisdom and compassion. So that's our program for this next hour. Following that, we will have the presentation on education, which will be very exciting to get the news about Dharma Realm Buddhist University. There's a lot of light there. There's a lot of things going on in bringing forward Master Hsuan Hua's vision of educating cultivators and learning, teaching cultivators how to expand their minds, how to learn to teach other living beings. Then in the afternoon from 4 to 5, if anybody is still awake, we will have the presentation on translation and the publications of the Buddhist Text Translation Society. I'm sure you'll all be awake, no doubt about it. And it's going to be thrilling. You'll want to know about that. What did the Buddha actually say? Can we still hear the Buddha's voice? Well, it depends on who comes to translate. So, no further ado, let's ask Dharma Master Liang to lead us into the presentation about the Sangha.
Good afternoon, Dharma friends. My name is Hang Liang. I have been a Buddhist nun for over 30 years, and I'm going to give you my perspective on the Sangha jewel in DRBA. It's going to be a little bit more formal from probably what you've heard so far, because by nature the Sangha is formal. So we've been calling this the Sangha legacy. Establishing a fully ordained Sangha of both monks and nuns was one of the 4 great legacies or missions of the Venerable Master Hua. When the Venerable Master Hua was in the world, he called these missions, and he did emphasize these, establishing a Sangha, promoting education, translating the sutras, and interfaith. You can go to the next slide, please. So as legacies, these have become the responsibility of the disciples of the Venerable Master Hua that he passed on at the advent of his nirvana. And so it has come to us to be the torchbearers of these 4 great lights, so that they will never be diminished or extinguished, but carried on for the world into the future. Most often when the 4 legacies are named, the Sangha legacy is the first in the list, reflecting its importance. In coming to the U.S., it is clear to me that this mission was not only for the sake of teaching and transforming Americans and establishing the Sangha jewel in the West. It was just as much for the sake of rescuing and preserving the Sangha jewel for Buddhism itself. The Venerable Master often lamented that a general greed for fame and profit, looseness in maintaining the precepts, and lack of education among the Sangha all contributed to the decline and purge of Buddhism in China. And so his establishing a Sangha in the U.S. was a way of reforming and reinvigorating the Sangha jewel for the perpetuation of the proper Dharma for the entire world. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The key word here is the world. For the Venerable Master's Buddhism, although true to Chinese Mahayana Buddhism in form, was in spirit and in essence a universal Buddhism, transcending countries, cultures, races, time, gender, and further, it embraced all the wisdom traditions. He often called Buddhism the study of wisdom and exhorted us always to follow wisdom, not charismatic personalities, creeds, blind faith, and certainly not superstition. To prevent greed for fame and profit among his Sangha disciples, he established the 3 great principles, which we recite every day. Freezing, we do not scheme. Starving, we do not beg. Dying of poverty, we ask for nothing. According with conditions, we do not change. Not changing, we accord with conditions. We adhere firmly to our 3 great principles. We renounce our lives to do the Buddha's work. We take the responsibility to mold our own destinies. We rectify our lives to fulfill the Sangha's role. Encountering specific matters, we understand the principles. Understanding the principles, we apply them to specific matters. We carry on the single pulse of the Patriarch's mind transmission. So those are the 3 great principles that the Sangha in DRB8 tries to follow. And to counteract looseness in the precepts, he promoted strict adherence to the precepts and always wearing the precept sash and eating only 1 meal a day at midday. And to prevent a lack of education among Sanghas, he promoted DRBU and urged that all Dharma Realm Buddhist universities ceremony for DRBU. Okay, so these are examples of how Shifu taught and transformed Americans. Okay, I guess you better stop there. The slides are not in perfect order. Most American Buddhists nowadays refer to the Sangha as the entire 4-fold assemblies of monks and nuns, laymen and laywomen. In short, anyone who calls himself a Buddhist is considered a Sangha member, according to most American Buddhists. But the Venerable Master was very clear and repeated often that his definition of Sangha was restricted to fully ordained monks. Of them are fully ordained monks or nuns. It's safe to say the percentage is so minuscule as to amount to a tiny fraction of 1%. From this, we can see that the Buddha's Dharma is hanging by a thread of a Sangha. And if this thread becomes so thin that it breaks, then the genuine Buddha Dharma will disappear. That is how important the Venerable Master's first great mission or legacy is. Important as it is, Americans especially find it very difficult to leave home, which is likely the reason for so few Sanghas in the U.S. today. The Master used to say that teaching and transforming Americans to leave the home life was the most difficult thing to do. And the fact that he was able to inspire so many American disciples to shave their heads and renounce worldly pursuits was perhaps the strongest and clearest testament of his wisdom, his compassion, and his bodhisattva spiritual skills. To obtain a human body, draw near to Buddhism, hear the Dharma, follow a good and wise advisor, and vigorously cultivate the way are all extremely difficult and rare. To further be able to leave the home life and become and remain a fully ordained monk or nun, and reliably hold the precepts and cultivate is rarer still. and it becomes more and more difficult as the human race rushes toward its oblivion. For all those reasons, the Venerable Master often praised the act of leaving home. I personally heard him say that he would support in every way anyone who had even a tiny impulse to leave the home life and practice the way. For anyone to simply plant a seed to become a monastic in a future life made him visibly happy. And so the Venerable Master accepted people of all ages to leave the home life. There we go. Okay, we're caught up. That said, he exhorted people not to wait until they are old and spent, not to think of leaving the home life as a type of retirement, but to leave the home life when one is still young and vigorous, because to strictly adhere to the precepts and vigorously cultivate the way requires the energy and stamina of young adulthood to middle age. And when we see this from his own example, what we can see from his own example is just this. He left the home life as a young man, chose the life of a virtuous monk, and became a high Sangin. He used his body to teach the Dharma. That in itself is an important and profound teaching to all of us. He taught us that the Sangha's primary responsibility is to uphold the precepts, study the Dharma, cultivate the way, and turn the Dharma wheel. And the primary responsibility of the laity is to support and protect the Triple Jewel, and he often referred to his lay disciples as respected Dharma protectors. Over the years, the Master established many expedients to exhort and provide conditions for the Sangha to realize their responsibility. Of these, several have remained permanent, and before entering nirvana, he strongly and often emphasized them. He often emphasized these to make sure that we all understood the seriousness and determination of this instruction and importance of putting these principles into practice. Like Vajra, they cannot be eliminated, and they provide a firm and solid foundation, a rudder for the Sangha to cultivate and steer by. I just recited for you the 3 great principles. He also left us the 6 great principles, eating 1 meal a day and always wearing the precept sash. So I think you can go on now. Since time is brief, it is not possible for me to go into anecdotes and stories. I'm sure you've heard already many stories today, and you will hear many more this afternoon. Okay, there we are, DRBU. The Master taught, transformed, and established a Sangha in the U.S. Suffice it to say that in teaching and transforming Sangha disciples, his standards were lofty, his guidance was impeccably, amazingly wise, his discipline strict, and his spirit sublimely kind and compassionate. He taught and transformed people to become Sanghas. He also taught people to become Dharma protectors. His methods for each of these 2 groups was different, and further his methods for teaching and transforming each individual differed in accord with each one's capacity. So I'm going to shorten my talk because it's already 1:30. Okay. So some of you might wonder how one becomes a bhikshu or a bhikshuni in DRBA now. The method for becoming a bhikshu or the method for becoming a bhikshuni is slightly different. And as I don't have the authority to describe the method for becoming a bhikshu, I will just generally describe how a person goes about leaving home in DRBA. In general, for both genders, the first step is to live in a DRB monastery as a Dharma protecting layperson. For women, this is a minimum of 2 years. Okay, that's a photo that has a story that I was going to tell, but there's no time. Maybe Dharma Master Lai can tell you that story some other time. That's Dharma Master Lai there. He's being scolded by the Venerable Master. Well, I can tell this story, but the point is that one difference in the way that Shifu taught and transformed Sanghans was that he was a lot stricter with us. He watched our every move, and as soon as we made a small mistake, he would remind us very clearly. So anyway, this scolding had something to do with how we walk in line, I think, or something. I hope Dharma Master Lai will tell the story. Okay, so as a layman or laywoman, living in the monastery for a number of years, supporting the community with volunteer work, attending ceremonies, and studying precepts for laity. Having gone through that successfully, one would be able to apply to leave the home life. This is a picture of some people leaving the home life. I only have photos of nuns, so please imagine that there are also monks in the photos. Twice as many monks would be good. Anyway, so for nuns, the minimum number of years for a novice training is 3 years. 3 years before being eligible for full ordination. Having made it through the 3 years successfully, one can ascend the threefold full ordination platform only after going through 108 days of vigorous training. Okay. So, something that's different, Dharma Master Sher mentioned something that was different about the Sangha in DRBA from other organizations, is that our full ordination ceremonies, in our full ordination ceremonies, the precepts are transmitted by both Mahayana and Theravada high Sanghans. So this was Shifu's way of bringing, as he said, bringing the north a little bit more south and bringing the south a little bit more north. He often said that Mahayana Buddhism could be stronger in the precepts, and Theravada Buddhism would even be better if it could be more expansive in its vision and accept. Anyway, I better not go into that. So I'm a little bit lost here because of the slides not matching the script. But in short, there are 108 days of precept platform followed by a full ordination ceremony. Our ordination hall is a permanent hall. That's also an unusual thing. Usually the precept platform is set up and taken down after the ordination is over. Our permanent precept platform, if you want to see it, is next to No Words Hall, where the Venerable Masters Sharira reside. Okay, so it's now past 1:30. I'll just finish by saying that full ordination in DRBA is just the first step in a lifetime of dedication to the Triple Jewel. And after leaving the home life, we not only vigorously uphold precepts, attend ceremonies, eat 1 meal a day, and so on, but each one of us is also encouraged to follow a vocation of our choice, and one that contributes to the Buddha Dharma, and also one that contributes to the community. So I'll end here and on to the next. Amitofo.
And now we'll turn our attention to the senior disciples of the Venerable Master as they reflect on how the Master's legacies have endured and how they can be perpetuated. We have 6 senior disciples on the panel here who will speak over the next hour. So that we have time for all the panelists, I'd like to respectfully ask each of the panelists to limit their comments to 8 minutes. At 8 minutes, I'll ring a hand bell, the yin ching, and if you could conclude your comments at that point, we'll have time for all of the panelists. Doug Powers holds a Master of Arts degree from the Graduate Theological Union. He's the Vice President of the Dharma Realm Buddhist Association, teaches philosophy and psychology at Dharma Realm Buddhist University, a teacher at Berkeley High School for over 30 years, and a disciple of the Venerable Master since the early 1970s. It is my honor to introduce Mr. Doug Powers.
Sit down. Come on up, and we have several panel members. Helen Wu, is Helen here? She was here this morning, and she doesn't really need to be introduced because she was here earlier. And Madalena Tam, is she here? Could she come up? Can you hear me? This is going to be a little bit more informal in that the goal of the next hour is for each of these people to speak primarily about, in their experience of Shifu, and most of the people on the panel will go back into the very, very early days of Shifu coming to America. So the idea is for them to speak for around 10 minutes or so, which isn't very long, but try to capture what for them they felt like the purpose of Shifu coming to the West was from their heart, and a little story maybe that demonstrates the point that they're making. So if all the people could come up, though, to sit down so we don't have to introduce each person as they come. So if Helen could come up too, and Hung Lai, you can tell your story. So Brian and Richard Joseph, also known as Hong Kong. So we have a really good cross-section of people that represent a lot of elements of the early period of Shifu. Maybe you can start, Madalena. And Madalena was with Shifu from the almost very beginning, even back into Asia. And so her understanding and original insight into what Shifu was about and coming to America will be insightful. Thank you.
Hello， 又再见到你们了。Should I speak in English? Okay. 刚刚Mr. Doug Power told me that I have to speak, but I haven't really prepared anything. So I just tell you what I have in mind about our Venerable Master Xuanhua. When I was in Hong Kong and my father met him at an old age of late 70s, and we were wondering why he will ask someone younger than his own son in his early 30s to become his master. But anyway, even after my parents took refuge under Master Xuanhua, I still didn't want to become his disciple. But however, after I met our master, And his compassion, his love toward us really make me feel different. He's not just like my father, but he's also my great teacher, both in Chinese and in Dharma. After he instructed me to come to America to establish the Buddhism in America, and I felt even more about his love toward everybody. I remember in the old time when the first 5 Sangha became, the first 5 people became Sangha. At that time, Gold Mountain Monastery was very poor. They practically have to get all the unwanted vegetable from those grocery and took it back to cook for their food. I remember one day, Shifu called me. Mu Jie, that's my Chinese name. 我今天要带几个出家众来你家吃饭. He said, Madalena, I will take the few people and the newly left home people to come to your house for lunch. And then I said, oh, sure. So there they came. So of course, I have to prepare much better food than Gold Mountain. Anyway, after they finished my offering, a few days later, 师父 called me again. 木姐，哎，你把他们的贪心都吃出来了。I said, I got their greed stem up. 哦，我是说，师父，对不起，罪过，罪过。你知道吗？你果林，他连坐都坐不定了。Those newly left home people cannot even just sit there and meditate. You know why? Because they're thinking of your delicious vegetarian food. I said, oh, 师父，怎么办啊？你知道吗？果林半夜都要起来，去想怎么做这个面筋。At that time, when we have to make vegetarian food, it's really, really rare because there's not enough ingredients. I remember I have to learn from my mother how to make gluten. And so I learned, and then because I know they are Shifu bringing people coming, so I make some glutens with vegetables. And one of the Sangha ate the glutinous food, and then he think, wow, that is delicious. So he couldn't just meditate in Gold Mountain. But then all day long, Shifu was watching, so he can't do anything. Not until midnight. So he got up and went to the kitchen and tried to make the gluten. But here, Shifu saw it. What are you doing, Guoling? Oh, Shifu, I'm still thinking about the gluten that Madalena made. So Shifu called me again. 你知道吗？他们的贪心都给你吃出来了。Oh, so, but just from this little story, you can understand Shifu's compassion and Shifu's love, because he knew that all these newly left home people didn't really have any good vegetarian food. So he wanted them to have a little bit better food in my house. But then he also very kind, because he did not really punish Guoling, but he just taught him, what is cultivation. So from this little story, I hope you all understand that Sifu's love and Sifu's kindness and also Sifu's compassion. As also, you all probably remember Sifu's 18 vows. 2 of the vows that he said that he wished that he will carry all the sufferings for all human beings. And I'm sure he did, because I remember when he was sick in LA, I asked him, I said, Sifu, how come you also get sick? And he said to me, he said, you've been my disciple for so long, you should understand, because I have to pay all these debts. Because also, I remember in Hong Kong, everybody came over to ask Sifu to cure their disease, to cure their sickness. And as you know, Sifu would do that. But all these karma brought over to Sifu, and Sifu took it. And also in his other vow, he said he would give all whatever he's supposed to have, all his blessings, to for everybody, as long as is his disciple. So this kind of great love, this kind of great compassion is our Shifu. So we are so fortunate to have such a Shifu. And that's why when he told me, when my sister told him there's no true Dharma in America, he didn't mind to come over to America to deliver his love and his kindness and his compassion, because I also told him, Shifu, go to America is not a good thing. If you heard me this morning, you know that he told me to come to America. It will be beautiful. But I also told Shifu, I said, I came to America. It's not beautiful. I have to do everything on my own, even boiling water, because I never know how to boil water. So that's why I told Shifu, I said, Shifu, if you decided to go to America, you should think twice, because you have to do everything on your own. Nobody cook for you. Nobody wash your clothing. He said, Madalena, I want to go to America because I want to help liberate human beings and all beings, because I want them to leave all their sufferings, and I want them to obtain the ultimate bliss. That's the first thing that he told everybody when he stepped off the plane. Well, I know the time is up. If I have to tell more than 60 years of my experience with our master, it will take probably 60 years. But anyway, I hope you all understand and you all remember his love, his kindness, and his compassion toward us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dharma Shung Lai, he's already been set up, so I don't know. But everybody knows Dharma Master Lang, so I don't really have to introduce him. But if he could say a few words.
To the Great Assembly, the Venerable Master, the Amitofo. I just can tell you a short 8 minutes or less story, probably less. The one thing that our master, I've always remembered about Shifu more than any other thing, that he says, my only purpose for coming here is to make Buddhas. And he wants all of us to be Buddhas. That's what he told me when I first left home. That's what he told me over and over and over again. And he says, the one thing that really impressed me is, he says, when I meet somebody new, I never look at their gender. I don't look whether they're pretty or ugly. I don't look how tall they are, how fat they are. He doesn't care. He said, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. I only look at one thing. I look at their Buddha nature. And I look at their Buddha nature and I try to figure out a way to make them see their Buddha nature. He says, that's my job. I'm the Buddha maker. And all these Buddhas in this Buddha hall were made by Shifu. And I used to haul them up here in a little Volkswagen. But he would spend all night. He would lecture at Gold Mountain Monastery, and he was tireless. We'd take him home out into the avenues in San Francisco into this little goofy little house, and he'd have the garage all set up, and he'd work all through the night making these images. And call me in the morning. You have a time? Yes, Shifu. I need to have more Buddhas. Take it to Wanfachang. Okay, Shifu. So that was my little job, taking Buddhas to Wanfachang. But this is the one legacy I always have with Shifu, is that he was here for one thing, and that was he didn't want to mess around. He wasn't here to make us happy for a day or two or anything like that, or become famous and to have everybody adore him. He wanted to make Buddhas. He was dead serious about it, and he still is. So that's my little speech. Omitofo.
So we have the gluten maker and the Buddha maker. So maybe next, since I saw Helen just come in, we've been sort of hanging out here while you were whatever you were doing, but now that you're here, you can do some work too. So she's she spoke already this morning a little bit, but maybe she could give 10 minutes about her early experience and what she feels the primary purpose of Shifu coming to America was.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be back here again. Actually, throughout the years, I have so many things, so many stories to tell. I want to share. I want to give back to all these new disciples. Haven't really met him before, but this way too much, way beyond the time. But eventually, I try to give back what Shifu have taught me. First, I want to mention about Dharma Sir Heng Lai. And during the years, after we got the City 10,000 Buddhas, Shifu actually is not physically well, but he don't let anybody know. He works so hard. After everybody rests, the city is pitch dark because we want to save electricity. And Shifu, we walk in the dark and go around the whole area, check, make sure everything's okay. And many times, because his feet cannot feel, so he do fall down. And I feel that Dharma Heng Lai is very filial to him. And that always moved me. And he's the one that thought of buying a used golf car so Shifu can sit in the little car. That really moved, because Shifu cares so much about us, take care of all our problems and everything. But to really give back to him, we're just only asking him for things to help us. But not very few of us really think how we should filial to him, take care of him. So That's one thing I like to mention. Every time I see Dharma Shalai, I thought of what he had done for Shifu. As I talked this morning, and actually, Shifu has influenced my life so much. And for one thing I like to share with everybody is in the beginning, their solid disciples does not speak Chinese, so when they have problem, they'll ask me to go to see Shifu. I'll be the translator. But in the end, Shifu always say one word in English. He always say, try your best. And that word stick to my mind. And that is what kept me going and made me almost pretty successful in everything I do, because I try my best. Always remember what Shifu say. But because before that, I'm very lazy. You know, whatever. I just want to have a good time, not to really try my best, but to be a Buddhist. And we have to do everything to try our best. And in fact, the very first time when Shifu brought all the sanghas and the sutras and the lay people to Los Angeles, I was so impressed. I said, wow, all these people, they give up everything, they become monks and nuns, and they give up their life for Buddhism. And as I think, now I'm took refuge with Shifu. What part would I play? What I do? And I don't understand it because I'm very young in Buddhism. I think for many, many months, because I met Shifu, I'm already 40 years old, I'm married, I have children. If I meant to be a bhikshuni, I probably met Shifu a lot younger. Besides, basically, I'm a vile person, you know, love, have good time, you know. I don't think I can really settle down. I really got everything out of my system. I did everything there could to make me happy, but end up miserable. So finally, when I almost reached 40, I started seeking what is all about, the universe, what is all about, where we come from. That's when maybe way back, I had planted the Buddha seed. So I think maybe Buddhism can answer my questions. That's why I got into it. And I thought if I meant to be a Sangha member, I probably met Shifu a lot earlier. But I'm already this way. What can I do? Then finally I realized, okay, we need Dharma protectors. Then I'll be the Dharma protector. I will try my best. I'll be the best I could be, the Dharma protector, because that's my duty. Since then, I've been so busy, trying very, very hard in every facet of way. And I like to maybe bring a little bit lighter. It's too serious. Anyway, in the beginning, Shifu was so kind and compassionate. You know, very little things we look for him and ask him, please help me this, please help me that. We're just very fortunate to be so close to him, and he don't have so much disciple, and to be near him, and to know all his compassions and everything, all the little things he taught us. And if there's a Kleenex, he will use it probably for 3 days. He used once and folded and put it back in his pocket. And then the next time he used again, maybe he used for 2-3 days just for not too wasteful. So up to now, 我们的家风 our tradition in the city 10,000 Buddhas, you will see envelopes and envelopes pass and pass and pass, all used envelopes until they're torn. You know, we still use. So right now, even in my office, we use people send to us. I don't throw away the envelope. All my office don't. They learn from me too. We use the used envelopes. And I just tell you a little story, the very early part. And you know, I love cats. And one day my cat disappeared. I was so desperate. I looked for 3 days. I couldn't find it. Finally, I don't know what to do. I said, I better ask for Shifu. I call him. I say, I lost my cat. Please help me. So, you know what? A week later, I found this little muddy little thing in my backyard. I say, what is that? It's my cat. I was shocked because he's gone so long. We have coyotes and everything in the backyard. The cat come back. And but one day I heard Shifu in the lecture, he said, "Oh, I'm just so busy. Even my disciples' cat got lost. I have to take care of it." Well, anyway, I slowly learned not to be so selfish through his, just be near him, through all his teachings. From a very selfish person, self-centered person, I learned how to give, become a caring person, how to give. And there's so many things he had taught me. I cannot even begin to share, but up to now, I'm in my late 70s, I'm so happy because I understand what he taught me. What he taught me, I apply to my daily life, make my daily life useful, happy, and I can follow his path because I made myself the promise I'll try the best of Dharma protector I could be. I'm still doing it. I follow his teaching. Of all the teachings, I think one of the things he stresses is education. To him, education is very important. Education transforms a person's life. That's why even at the early days, most difficult time, and those really hard times, Shifu started schools. So from the grammar school on, the primary school, high school, and the university. And being my father is also an educator, so in the recent years, I trying to go into that route, go through education. So I'm doing some work in China, helping the students over there. But there's so many things I want to share. Let's see, Shifu also, some people, you have problems, ask him what to do. A lot of times he will tell them, you sincerely pray to Guanyin Bodhisattva, then your problem, Guanyin Bodhisattva is very compassionate, will help you. So I just want to, few things that I remember very well, that I used to apply to my life, I like to share with most of you. And another thing, the last thing he had mentioned to me is when I live on the beach. I bought a place in the beach. Shifu come in. He loved water. When he saw the ocean, he taught me. He said, "Okay, now you'll face the ocean. You'll face the water. Then your tolerance should be as wide, as deep as the ocean. You just remember that." I remember that. I really apply that. A lot of times I get frustrated, and then I'm very easily to forgive too, you know. And I have bad temper, very bad temper. And Shifu always say, everything about you is wonderful, but you bad temper. So it's just terrible. So he says, I don't want anything from you. Just give me your bad temper. So every time I see him, he asks me, 果香, 有发脾气了没有啊? Did you lose your temper? And I run away. I wouldn't answer him because I'm too ashamed. I couldn't. And then once in a while he asked me, did you pick on your husband again? Then I would say, one time I talked back to him. I said, well, he owes me the past life. He said, what happened if he didn't owe you? Now what are you going to do? He didn't owe you the past life. What are you going to do? Well, anyway, all the little things, he's very, very compassionate, and his warmth. And the later years when Shifu has a lot more disciples, I knew I'm fortunate that in the early years I could be so close to him. I learned how to not to bother him so much and give the new disciples a chance to be near him. So in the later years, you very seldom you come to the city or whatever, I don't go too near him. As long I'm in the way place, I feel his warmth, I feel his teaching, everything. That's enough. I don't have to be next to him. I want to get the new disciple has the opportunity to be near him. And although Shifu have left us, but all the old disciples are carrying part of Shifu.
maybe we pick up different ways, but I really want to share on what I have gotten from Shifu, what I used for my life, and make my life so wonderful, you know, and also learning tolerance and vigorously cultivate too. Not only I do outside things that to help the way place, but I very persistently cultivate. I'm still doing it. So although I have a lot of sickness, and good thing all my sickness at that time, very severe, is Shifu still around. He blessed me. And everything when my husband tests me is positive. Actually, I do have. And then later on will be gone because Shifu gave me the blessings. So I'm just very fortunate that I spent this lifetime, met Buddhism, met the best teacher there could be. And it's just so wonderful, and I like to give back. And if I have more time, I like to even share more. There's so many little stories I could tell. Thank you.
So I think everybody, from hearing so far, what people have been saying, and see the humanness. Hopefully you are feeling the sense of the early disciples and being with Shifu all the time, had such an opportunity to experience him in not so formal a way, in his kind of everyday sort of human qualities. And the way he was constantly caring, compassionate, especially how he was so consistent. I think from what I've heard so far, you can see how he was so consistent in not wanting to waste one small little item of the environment and protect the environment, not waste any resources, and never, I think every Western disciples, the first thing they were looking for is some inconsistency in him on a day-to-day basis, which you could never see because he was always totally consistent in all these values. The next person we'll have talk a little bit is a great opportunity. We don't usually get Richard Josephson around. He was known here when he was at the City 10,000 Buddhas as Hong Kong. And he was here for quite a long time as a monk, left-home person. And it'll be very interesting to see and listen to what he has to say about what Shifu meant to him when he was studying with him, and still what he's taken from that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Josephson. Shifu once said, "Every move I make is for Buddhism." The master, during the 10 years I was with him, never did anything casually. Everything he did had meaning. The harder you worked, the more he would push you, but never too much. Like a gentle mother, he would nurture you when you needed it and push you just as much as you could bear. And sometimes it became very difficult. The fact that the master, when the master said, "Every move I make is for Buddhism," when we lived with a Buddha, I felt a responsibility to get the messages. And I'll tell a little story, because my 10 years with him was about not getting it, but becoming very, very close to getting it each time. So the meaning was never entirely lost. It was just partially lost, never fully grasped the entire time. So that was enough to keep me going. And I worked as hard as I could, maybe not enough. But the fact that I was never quite getting it, but very close, moved me along, and it continues to this day. One time I gave the master a little note, and it said, to see Amitabha in the Western paradise, how does one do that when facing east? At that time, I was meditating about 8 to 10 hours a day in the Buddha Hall facing east. So I gave the master that note, and I continued my meditations, as always. And I was usually alone in the Buddha Hall, because I was the only one that was just too, I didn't have any capacity, basically, for anything else but sitting like a bear in hibernation. I tried Chinese, and to learn Chinese, and took Chinese classes, and I was the only one of all the master's disciples that Shifu told me, he says, you don't have to study Chinese. So I was stuck in the Buddha Hall for lack of any other talent. So I gave the master this note, and at the time of giving it to him, I'd been sitting a year or two, in that same chair, facing east, wanting to see Amitabha, of course. So one day, a few days after I gave the master the note, I sensed the master's presence in the Buddha Hall. Sometimes it's not so difficult. You don't even have to be in meditation. But I was lost in meditation, but I sensed the master was there, and he was there for a while. It was just me and him, but for some reason he was circumambulating the Buddha in reverse direction, like a bunpo, like somebody outside the proper way, so to speak. So he did 3 circumambulations to with the Buddha on his left, around me, who was sitting next to the Buddha. At that time, I sat next to the Buddha, and on the wall there was a bowing bench. So he was actually circumambulating me reverse as well. And after 3 circumambulations, I felt his presence right beside me, but I ignored him completely. But then he started breathing down my neck, and I felt this warm breath down my neck. And so I turned my head up, and I see Shifu, and he looks at me, and he handed me a toothbrush. So I looked very carefully at the toothbrush. I looked at it. It's a toothbrush. Okay. So I tossed it under my meditation bench and went back to meditation. But I did take a good look at it and thanked Shifu for the toothbrush. And then I found myself again sitting in the Chan Hall all by myself. Several days passed as I sat in meditation, And while in meditation, the toothbrush came to mind like a vision of Amitabha or something. It was very bright and shiny, this toothbrush. So I thought, maybe I should look at that toothbrush. And so I broke my meditation and I reached under the bench. And I looked at the toothbrush. It was a Dr. West brand toothbrush. So after that, I just turned myself around. It's kind of a metaphor for what's really going on and what Sherpa was really about. It's probably not perfectly logically connected, but it was about bringing Buddhism from the East to the West, is what Sherpa's primary goal. Of course, I missed the point at the appropriate moment, because one of the principal teachings of Sherpa is to pay attention to what's going on. Be aware of what's happening at the moment, because once that moment passes, the opportunity is missed. And so I had an opportunity. It was an unbelievable opportunity to live with a great master for so many years and be close to him. And now, it's been many years since Sherpa passed away. And I'm here today because some people wanted to hear some stories about what it was like being with the Master. But the Master's physical form, of course, was not his Dharma body. His Dharma body was before his physical form, and it's with us now. And it is my firm belief that there are many, many disciples who, in a disciplined way, follow the Master's teachings and look to the Master as their teacher and are guided by his teachings, that share equally the blessings of being with such a great, great being, a rare being in the entire world, past, present, and future. There'll be very, 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 very few Sherpas. So we have, all of us, whether we've been with the Master in his physical form, as I have and some of you have, or whether we have just been blessed by being able to and have accumulated the merit in some form or other to hear the teachings of the Buddha through the Master in any form, whether it's book or whatever. If we are practicing the discipline ourselves, this is the Master's main teaching. We don't have a choice. If we're really a disciple of the Master, we have a responsibility to others. The altruistic intention to benefit other people. If we can't do this, how can we call ourselves disciples of the Master if we're just sitting on our hands, doing our prayers every day and some meditation and going to Dharma talks once in a while. This is not enough. We have a responsibility, each one of us, and the Buddha himself said, if you know one line of the Dharma, teach one line. If you know 2 lines, teach 2 lines. If you know a whole gatha, teach a gatha. If you know a page, teach a page. If you know a sutra, teach a sutra. Whatever you know, teach. And teaching is not preaching. The Buddha taught to respect the Dharma as a precious gem. So we speak at appropriate times, generally when asked. But the Dharma is to be shared. And if we're meditating at home, we have a responsibility to anybody that comes to us, whether it be at work, at sports, or whatever we do. If somebody expresses an interest in the Dharma, we can say to them, yes, I actually meditate every day. You're welcome to join me. Why don't you come if you're interested? Bring people, expand your realm. The Master came to America. It's remarkable to me. I look at it today, and I have, after I left the Master for many years, I look at it today. In the last year, it's particularly impressed me how the Master came to America a single person. He didn't have anyone to help him. He didn't have Ami Tofu.
So one thing that I guess I'd say, listening to Richard and all of the people that have spoken so far, and maybe to all of us here, is, you know, Shifu can't bring Buddhism to the West and the world by himself. So you can hear in what I've heard so far how important each person was to Shifu coming by himself to America and then being supported by a group of people from the very early days through eating food from the back of Safeway with no money at all, no resources at all, to from one place slowly building this very large, the city of 10,000 Buddhists and so forth. And if you look at it from the perspective of the people speaking today, from that to now, you can see that it's growing very, very quickly, and very, very huge growth of the Dharma, of Shifu's Dharma, because of everyone here, their efforts on behalf of the Dharma, of Shifu's Dharma. And I just want to say that all the people in the 50 years that worked with and helped Shifu, all the people, whether they're here now at the city now or no longer at the city, they were all important parts of the whole legacy, the whole Dharma, because without any one of those people, or all those people that worked in the past, we wouldn't all be here today in this situation here at the city speaking today. So that we heard Richard talk, I really want to point out that every single person in the entire legacy is important and part of that whole process of history to where we are today. We have one more person, and this gives us a real good cross-section of people, because we have Brian Conroy, who came a little bit later, but provides us with another perspective on what he feels Shifu's Dharma was, what he brought to the West, and what he perceives or sees as the main insights he's gotten from Shifu.
That's true. I wasn't originally part of the panel, but I'll speak. Thank you. Thank you. That's karma right there. I came from kind of a different perspective. I kind of came on the tail end of the hippie generation. And frankly, I came across Buddhism through rock and roll music. The Beatles meditated, and it seemed like kind of a cool thing to do. I was raised Catholic, and when I got out of high school, I wanted to sort of make a direct connection with the divine, and I began seeking different religious paths. I went to other Christian services. I did Sufi dancing. I went to a number of different ashrams. I spent time with Native Americans doing ceremonies. And then a friend of mine, we all had long hair and facial hair. A friend of mine suggested we go, I believe he was a disciple of Kirpal Singh. I don't know if anyone remembers, this was a Sikh master. And apparently Kirpal Singh's disciples had been given direction to go to Shurfu and become his disciples. And so this friend of mine took me up to Gold Mountain Monastery, and we sat in meditation for an hour or two, and then there was a Dharma talk, and Shurfu came out. And I remember, from my perspective, it seemed like almost as soon as he came out, we made eye contact. And at the point in time that we made eye contact, I didn't realize it until years later, but that was a turning point in my life, because I really had a very strong sense he could see completely through me, knew everything I was thinking, and I really felt kind of like a phony, as if I had so much work to do. But things were sort of sorted out at that point in time. I made a commitment to become a teacher. I made a commitment, though it took me a few more years to sort it out, to become a Buddhist disciple. I realized that it was a very serious thing and that I could no longer dabble in religion. And it was also important to me that the precepts were the foundation of all of Shurfu's teachings, because it seemed like a roadmap, an actual set of principles for your conduct. And since then, I've become a disciple. It took me many more years to do it. I had many friends that sort of on a whim took refuge, and I didn't want to take refuge. I didn't take refuge in the 1970s. It took me actually until the early 1990s before I did. But many of my friends took refuge. I regret that I didn't take refuge in the 1970s because of the whole name ceremony that went along and the teaching that associated with your name, and I wish that I had been able to do that. But many of my friends are no longer associated with any of the way places here, and I think that's unfortunate. And so when I made the commitment, I wanted to be very true to the path and very serious about taking refuge, and knew that I was doing it for all of the right reasons. So hence the 10 or 12 year gap in between doing that. Another thing I remember about Shurfu is his smile and the way he reacted to children, which I tried to carry over into my own teaching. I've taught middle school now for 30 years, kind of a tough group to work with, but very wonderful if you approach that age group right. And I think that some of my teaching techniques came from the Venerable Master, just in the way that he expressed so much compassion and so much kindness, and a sense of playfulness is really the way that I saw it, just the way that he would interact with young people. And so I try to carry that legacy into my own teaching and bring a little bit of kindness and compassion into my teaching on an everyday basis. Amitov, Amitov. Vegetarianism, too. Absolutely. I mean, I had been a vegetarian since 1972, but absolutely, it all tended to make sense at that point. You know, all of the 5 precepts, beginning with vegetarianism, which to me was a broader thing than maybe the vegan craze now, which seems to be centered more around animal cruelty issues, and certainly that's a part of my own vegetarianism, but it was a broader perspective of being nonviolent, anti-war, pro-environment, and all of the animal issues, but mainly living a harmless life, not harming any other living thing. Amitofa.
So, I think from hearing those people's experiences, I think we can say that Buddhism is in the West. We're here for sure, so it's in the West, but also I think I heard in all of those expressions very unique, in each case a very unique sense of how Shifu in each of their own lives moved them and had them begin to practice Dharma in a certain kind of way, and you could hear the diversity of approaches there. We only have a couple minutes, so I was going to say a couple words, but I'll say 2 minutes of words. So in my experience, I came to Gold Mountain in 1973, the same summer as Heng Shi. We're somehow like endlessly wedded because he was there left a few days before I arrived. And we were the two people in Old Gold Mountain in 1973 that were staying there that summer. What I could say about, just real quickly, what his appeal to us was, to me was, we were in the world in the days of freedom, of extensive freedom. Like, how free could you be? And what I remember about Shifu is essentially he decided to challenge us in a freedom war. He says, you guys are really free, but I'm more free than you are. You guys think you're free, like we were all, most of us were hippies in the 60s. You guys think you're free, but you're not really free. And I'm more free than you, and I challenge you guys to prove to me that you're more free than I am. And in terms of approaching the West, and now the world, not just the West, but the entire world, I still think Shifu's primary dharma is a question of a misunderstanding of freedom. That we misunderstood freedom in the 60s, the 70s, and the way we misunderstood freedom has now a virus that's taken over the entire world. The freedom that I thought I had is now basically taken over the entire world. It's the freedom of thinking that your instincts or what you feel like you want to do, that if you're able to do what you feel that you want to do, that's freedom. And we know from here, from Shifu's Dharma, that what he was teaching us from the 60s on, and I think still the major message to not only the West but the whole world, is that acting on what you feel like, or on your instinct, or on the social normative, anytime you're acting in what you feel like is freedom and getting what you want in that freedom is actually a constraint, because it's the habituation of a continuation of not actually having freedom from those constraints and habits. And I think that was his message, and not only was it his message, but we kept looking, as I said earlier, for inconsistencies where he would actually act for self or for something else other than the kind of freedom that he was teaching us, but we could never find it. No matter if we were traveling with him for weeks or months, you could never find a moment where he was inconsistent to the kind of freedom he was teaching. So there was the thing about Shifu compared to everyone else that I ever saw, and I don't know if somebody else has seen somebody different, the difference was that he lived absolutely consistently with what his message was. There was no inconsistency between the embodiment and the teaching that he was providing us. So with those comments, I think we've used our entire hour and can pass it on to the next part, which is on education. And really appreciate all the panelists. Thank you very much.
So we thought maybe we would lose continuity. In the schedule, there's a break from 2:30 to 2:45. But it might be best just to carry on with our education legacy. If you feel you want to stretch or you want to take a break, now would be an okay time to do that. But let's bring up Wayne and Marty. Are we ready for the education legacy?
We'll have some slides. We'll have some slides in between of pictures of the education legacy. And then 2:45, the panel will come on.
Okay, very good. So we'll have a slideshow and followed by the education legacy at 2:45. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
2:45. Could we have the lights on? Could we have the lights on? Okay, thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Could everyone please take a seat? We're going to start the next session right now, and it's on the education legacy. So today we will have a panel with several speakers that will introduce various aspects of the education legacy of the Venerable Master, including Dharma Realm Buddhist University and the secondary and elementary schools. Our first speaker will be Dr. Martin Verhoeven. He is currently the Dean of Academic Affairs at DRBU, Dharma Realm Buddhist University, and a longtime disciple of the Venerable Master, and has been teaching at DRBU for many, many years. He is a wise mentor to young people, helping them to apply the Buddha's teachings in their daily lives. And he is an essential member of the faculty who is creating the new program for the Dharma Realm Buddhist University. Let's welcome Dr. Verhoeven.
Oh, there we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Those of you who haven't found a seat, grab one. I'm leading off the education panel, but I had the opportunity to listen to some of the earlier panels and then walk around the campus. And when I came up here, I usually feel kind of old. I'm an older person now. But seeing so many of the elder disciples who are older than me, I actually feel pretty young now. So I must say thank you for the gift of that relative age difference. Let me start. I want to tell a couple of stories because the stories really illustrate, and introduce you to the educational component. Let me start by one story. In the early 1980s, when we were bringing the university for recognition to the state of California, we had to go through an on-site inspection. In other words, they send a team out to look at your campus and talk to everybody. And at that time, Shifu had me in the role of chancellor, so I was leading the team here. When they came on, they obviously saw the monks and nuns in robes, and they saw the Buddha Hall. And they said, you know, maybe you'd be better off to do a theological school, like a Buddhist seminary. and not go for the university that you're proposing. We were proposing a university with bachelor's, master's, and PhDs at the time. Shifu himself didn't talk to any of the state people, but he was in his place at K in constant touch with us. So I was over at the office and the phone rang, and it was Shifu. He said, you know, his usual was, "Zamayang, what's up?" And I said, "Well, it's going very well, except for this issue of applying for bachelor's, master's in the liberal arts tradition. Maybe we'd be better off to do a theological Buddhist seminary model." And Shifu said, "可以." So I felt very relieved at the time, because to actually argue for a whole liberal arts campus of that scale was a daunting task. And so then I said back to Shifu, "So you mean we can settle for a theological seminary?" He said, "No." I said, "Shifu, I don't get it." He said, "We're just starting out. We're new in America. Buddhism's new. So you can be expedient. When you go out the front door," he said, "you can be expedient. Did I teach you this?" I said, "Yes." He said, "But we also accord with conditions but don't change." I said, "I still don't get it." He said, "So if you need to establish a theological school to begin with, that's okay. But that's not where we want to stop." And I said, "Well, where do we want to go, Shifu?" And then he said, "Well, I want a big, real university." He said, like Stanford, like Cal, like Harvard. Now, you have to imagine, I'm the little chancellor at this point. And he said, "And I want all the departments and disciplines. I want medicine, I want law, I want engineering, I want the sciences, the humanities, the arts, music, everything. Why do you think I called it Dharma Realm Buddhist University?" Those of you who know what Dharma Realm means would get this. And I said, "Oh," he said, "this is the reason why Buddhism is not doing well in Asia, is because it's separated from its educational thrust." And I said, "Shifu, that's a really big," I started to use the word big, which from you listening today, you realize that's not something you do with Shifu. And he said, "No, no, no. This is not too big. Your thinking is too small." He says, "Don't worry about it being too big. Just worry that you won't expand the measure of your mind." So he said, "Try your best." So we went ahead, we made the proposal, the state passed it, we got the degree granting authority to do what we were doing and now continuing to do. So I wanted to lay that out for you, because a lot of people think of Shifu as a great cultivator, as a Tripitaka and Chan master, which he certainly was, there's no doubt about it. But sometimes the heart of education that was in his person is lost. And I wanted to stress that a bit today in the time I have. Shifu was born in 1918 in Manchuria, in Donghae, and he was the youngest of 10 children, came from a large family. He only was able to attend school for 2 years, given the poverty and the lack of education available. But he still used that time to study all the Chinese classics and committed much of them to memory. And even when he was young, he opened a free school in his area for people to come to, for both children and adults. And then for 10 years, he devoted himself to studying the Buddhist scriptures in both the esoteric and the Chan schools. And he also read, and this is interesting, and contemplated and would often quote to us, better than my learning, texts from the Christian, the Taoist, and even Islamic traditions. This is with 2 years of education. When the master came to the United States, by 1968, he had established Buddhist lecture hall. It was a hall for lectures. And he began giving nightly lectures at that time. Some people say to an audience of young Americans, but I know from Shifu's story that many times there was only one American. This was an American who spoke absolutely no Chinese, and Shifu spoke no English. Every night this American would come with his jeans and his cowboy boots, sit on the bowing cushion, put his boots up on the other bowing cushion and sit back. And Shifu would lecture in Chinese. this would go for many, many nights. So Sherpa said, you can see that I'm very stubborn and also have a lot of patience. The master was really, as an educator, very tireless. You heard about the schools when they were started, the girls' school, the boys' school, and you hear more about that today, the Institute for World Religions, Dharma Buddhist University. Let me cut to the chase a little bit here and say, why? Why would a Buddhist monk, a patriarch in a lineage that goes way back, and I'm not going to go into that, why would he spend so much time and energy pushing, promoting, supporting, starting education? Let me offer some speculation, but it's also based on spending time with him and getting a feel for why he was doing this. The major reason is that Buddhism, by its very nature, is education. Buddhism is an educational teaching. And you learn Buddhism through asking questions, through discovery, through experimentation, through a back and forth dialogue between teachers and students, between text and students. The Buddha's own experience replicates this. He starts with a question, he goes forth, and he goes from teacher to teacher to teacher, learning. In the Avatamsaka Sutra, we have one chapter devoted to education called the Gandhavyuha. And in that chapter, this young good wealth goes through 50 or more teachers in search for an understanding of the truth. It's a model for all of us. And I think the reason why it's a teaching is because it has to be drawn out of us. The essence of Buddhism says that wisdom, compassion, enlightenment, bodhi, are innate. They're intrinsic. But they have to be drawn out of us. They have to be elicited. And that actually is the word in education in English, the Latin educere, means to draw out from within that which is latent. So all the language of Buddhism, enlightening, lighting up the mind, seeing the nature, all describe a learning educational process. That's why the Buddha called himself a teacher. And that's why Sherpa called himself a teacher. And we know this if you look at the Dhammapada, a very famous passage, excuse my poetic translation, but the text says, no one liberates you but yourselves, no one can, no one may. You yourself must walk the path. Buddhas only show the way. So the Buddha showing the way is the teacher. My second point, and since we don't have a timer, I'll just keep rambling here a little bit. My second point, and this is really where Sherpa is at, and you could hear from the earlier speakers, Sherpa deeply embodied and believed Iche Wei Shin Zhao. Everything is made from the mind alone. This is the central core teaching of Buddhism. So in Sherpa's teaching, there was no distinction between worldly and world transcending, between East and West, between Chinese and American, between men and women, and so forth. It was all one nature, all one mind that had the potential for realization. So Sherpa really stressed that as the outside world is a creation of our inner mind, and as the mind goes, so goes the world. If you want to change the world, you have to change your mind. And to change your mind, you have to study and cultivate. The Pure Lands and the Hells are made from mind. They're not pre-existing. Weapons of mass destruction and medicines of mass healing are also made from the mind. My grandfather, when I was on the farm, pointed to a horse once and said that horse has the potential to plow the field and feed 1,000 people. He came through World War I. He said, but I've seen that same horse hooked to a cannon, pulling the cannon and killing 1,000 people. It all depends on the master of the horse. Okay. My math is bad. I think this says 10 minutes. Yeah. So, the giving of the names, instilling goodness, developing virtue schools at the fundamental level have to do with Sherpa's understanding that power and knowledge without virtue, ethics, compassion could destroy the world. The two of them need to come together. And if you read recent dialogues in education, you realize this is the most pressing issue of the modern situation. How do we combine ethics, virtue, values with our facts and our knowledge? Okay. the last point I want to make very briefly is that Sherpa really understood in the modern world that universities are the heart, the dynamic pulse of everything that happens in society. The leaders, the decision makers, the research, the innovations, politicians and so forth all come through university education. So if you want to touch the future, you do it in the classroom. You want to impact what's coming, you do it through education. The last point I want to make, though, is, and this is really critical, it wasn't just education for lay people that Sherpa was talking about. He was. But he wanted the university to also be a university for Sangha. And this is something that took me a while to understand. I'll give you a brief story to illustrate this. We were traveling in Asia in 1977, and Sherpa would take us to see the new temples that were going up. And we went to one particular temple that was very lavish. It had imported marble from Italy, gilded Buddha statues 30 to 50 feet high, incense urns about half the size of this hall, great spacious ceilings. And we went in, and I was overwhelmed. And afterwards, Sherpa said, "Well, Goteng, what do you think?" I said, "Oh, Sherpa was really, really adorned, really awesome." And he said, "Yeah, well, what's missing?" I said, "Sherpa?" He says, "What's missing?" I said, "I don't know." He says, "There's no classrooms. There's no place for instruction. Where do people study and learn? Buddhism is about studying and learning and changing." He said, "Look at the people. They come in, they bow, they drop a red envelope in the box, they light a huge stick of incense, and they leave. But there's no transformation going on." He said, "Don't you realize that this is why Buddhism in Asia has declined so much? You cannot allow this to happen in the United States. All my way places have to be classrooms, places for, if it's turning the bowing cushions and sitting on them, there has to be lecture, discussion, translation, there has to be learning." So, based on that, Sherpa felt, and I will give you his closing statement, he said, "Therefore, in the United States, I'm going to make it a requirement that everybody who ordains under me has at least a bachelor's degree." So part of what DRBU is trying to do is to fulfill that wish, that we can create an institution that provides the knowledge and the thought waves of the larger culture so that the Sangha can go out in the ways that Sherpa would envision and really impact the world by being able to teach and transform across the medium of exchange, which is education today. That's clearly, I think, what he had in mind. So I'll end with a quote. And this is from his final instructions. He said, "Do a good job of training people and teaching students. Get organized and run the schools well. The elementary school should be run well. The secondary school should be run well a little bit better. And the university should be run well even more!" Exclamation point. Educating and training people is extremely important. You should not just care about yourself. So that's the sort of larger scope, I think, as I understood it, of Sherpa's vision of education. And then we're going to have a whole series of people. And I went over my time.
Thank you for that talk, highlighting the importance of education and disseminating the Dharma. Next, we have Dharma Master Han Liang, who is currently DRBU Dean of Student Services. She is also a senior nun who holds the role of Secretary of the Women's Sangha Committee. She is a kind and fair-minded advisor to both monastics and lay people and has been quietly working for decades to keep DRBU going so that it can continue to offer higher education in the Buddhist spirit. Her talk is going to share some points about the development of DRBU over the years.
Okay, that was quite an introduction. I don't think it's been quite decades. Not quite. Okay, so from the Venerable Master's personal history that you just heard about, we can know that education was one of his main concerns. Education is the ultimate social service because it gives people the tools to lift themselves out of their present conditions and achieve liberation. It's the Bodhisattva path, one of the vocations for Bodhisattva. DRBU was founded by the Venerable Master Hua as the first educational institution in DRBA. Anybody surprised at my saying that? How do I make that claim? It's because although DRBU was first received institutional approval from the state of California in 1984, it had been informally operating without offering degrees under the auspices of DRBA almost from the very beginning. You just heard that the first place that the Venerable Master established was called the Buddhist Lecture Hall. From that you can know that he had intentions to develop a university. In fact, the basic intention for an institution of higher learning that would include all the disciplines was written into the Articles of Incorporations for DRBA when it was first established. The Venerable Master always emphasized higher education for Sanghas as well as for laity, not only in the form of Buddhist scholarship. He encouraged all his disciples to be knowledgeable and well-educated in all aspects of learning, as well as informed about current events and issues. From the earliest days of the Buddhist Lecture Hall in Waverly Place in Chinatown to Gold Mountain Monastery and finally to CDTB, he exhorted his disciples to always be in the process of learning at all times and at every age and in all places. In Gold Mountain Monastery and at CDTB, he not only encouraged his own educated disciples to teach various subjects, he also invited a wide range of high Sanghas, scholars, professors, authors, artists, scientists, and so on to teach. And in all cases, when such a class was in session, everyone was required to attend. You couldn't hide in your room and give some excuse for not attending class. Everyone had to attend class. So when the Venerable Master was here, DRBU was fully supported and participated in by the entire community. The particular degrees that DRBU has offered over the years vary somewhat. In 1984, for example, when I was a student, DRBU offered a Bachelor of Arts degree in the humanities and a Bachelor of Arts degree in fine arts. We don't have those degrees right now, but we are developing a Bachelor of Arts degree in liberal arts. So we're finally realizing what the Venerable Master wanted us to do. He always made it clear that his intention was for DRBU to eventually become a full-fledged university. You just heard about that in story by Dr. Verhoeven. I was a member of the first graduating class of DRBU following its approval by the state of California. And from my experience over the years, it is clear to me that DRBU is a multifaceted, skillful expedient that serves a multitude of purposes. Here are some of them. To provide an institutional structure for transmitting the Buddha Dharma that could be preserved for future generations. To educate the Sangha. To attract young Westerners to the Dharma. To engender respect for Buddhism within a Western cultural context. To raise the status of Dharma Realm Buddhist Association. To attract talented professionals who could contribute their skills and expertise to the development of DRBA. To provide a context for many activities beneficial to DRBA and to Buddhism, such as cultural exchanges, hosting VIPs, providing outreach courses including meditation, art, music, exercise, vegetarian cooking, poetry, and so on. At the time the Venerable Master was about to enter nirvana, and this is a story, I was appointed as registrar for DRBU at that time. In those days, there was little support or interest for DRBU at CDTB. and the registrar had to wear many hats. DRBU didn't even have a building of its own. So at that time, I was fortunate to be able to visit the Venerable Master in West Covina, where he was sick. I asked the Venerable Master, DRBU is applying for reapproval from the state, and it needs a building. Is there a building at CTTB for DRBU? And I was very surprised at the Venerable Master's reply. He lamented as if his heart would break, and he said, I gave you people a building 30 years ago, and you've done nothing with it. He actually cried, real tears. Over 15 years as the Master's disciple at that time, I had seen him cry only once before. The Master went on to say that his disciples had let him down. They hadn't taken responsibility and supported and developed DRBU. I cannot tell you how deeply that affected me. Sad to say, throughout these years that I was registrar for DRBU, we could only maintain the status quo, and there was no real development. But things are looking up now for DRBU. For the past several years, a group of talented, virtuous, and vigorous young people have been working together with the Venerable Master's elder disciples to understand and articulate the Master's vision for Buddhist education in the 21st century and in the Western culture. The result is very exciting, and I personally believe that if the Master were here with us today, he would be very happy. Amitabha.
Okay. Now that we've heard a little bit about the history of DRBU, our next speaker is Dr. Stacy Chen, and she will share more about the maybe some of her reasons for coming back and also the current programs. She is an alumna of the Developing Virtue Girls School. After graduating from MIT, she came back to volunteer to teach biology in the girls' school before going on to earn a doctorate in microbiology. And she has been and is the director of summer and special sessions and also involved in planning the new program at DRBU. Let's welcome Dr. Chen.
I want to start by sharing with you guys a song written by Shifu for young children. It was a song I learned in summer camp when I was 12 years old at CTTB. The title is Yes Indeed, and it began like this. Yes, yes, yes indeed. The ways of the wise are what we study. And it goes on to say, when I grow up, I'll help all the people in the world so that all of us can go to enlightenment. And this was a song Shifu wrote for young children. The song left a deep impression on me, and it came to my mind as I was reflecting what Shifu's vision for education really is. To me, the song highlighted two important points. The first is the importance of knowledge and study. The second is the importance of virtue and practice. The first point, knowledge and study, is shown from Shifu's emphasis on studying the wisdom traditions, whether it is the words of the Buddha or enlightened masters, or the words of Chinese sages like Confucius or Lao Tzu. It is through the studying, as Shifu wrote in the song, the ways of the wise, that we learn how we live our lives and how we act. So the second principle from Shifu's song that I got is virtue and practice, which I see it as manifesting a sense of responsibility of wanting to do good. I asked a lot of our graduates from our schools, and it seems like a universal feeling that many young people from our school have this feeling of wanting to do something that is bigger than just themselves. This sense of responsibility of wanting to contribute to the world and people around them. To me, it is very clear that Shifu wanted education to be a transformative force in society. He often says that education is the nation's foundation. And it is through educating knowledgeable and capable students who are also kind and good at heart that these young people can go to every corner of our society and become a positive force for change. So with these principles in mind, DRBU is extending education to the university level. We have put together 2 new programs hoping to fulfill Shifu's vision in education, and I'll briefly discuss them here. The first is a new program. The first new program is a bachelor's degree in liberal arts. And just like how Shifu instructed the young students to study the ways of the wise, the core curriculum of the new program includes studying the classical texts from various wisdom traditions. We will read texts from the Buddhist tradition, including the sutras, the shastras, and the biographies of eminent monks, as well as the Chinese classical traditions, the Confucius, Lao Tzu, Mencius, Zhuangzi, etc. In addition, we will also do study texts from the Indian tradition, including the Vedic texts and the Bhagavad Gita, to name a few. And on top of that, we will also study the seminal thinkers of the Western tradition, such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And so these classical texts from various traditions will form the core curriculum of DRBU's liberal arts degree. In addition to all these classical texts, students will also have a foundation in mathematics, in natural sciences, which includes biology, physics, and chemistry, as well as music, and language, and writing. So a combination of all these courses will provide a well-rounded and a strong foundation so that the students can go to any field or any profession and be able to further their study. This type of well-rounded education will prepare our students to interact with people from all walks of life, whether they be teachers, doctors, scientists, historians, people from various faiths, from various cultures, and even politicians. And because this education covers multiple traditions, a DRBU student will be well-versed in both the Eastern tradition as well as the Western tradition, in the Buddhist tradition as well as in Christian and other faith traditions. Now, the second new program we will have at DRBU is a master's degree in Buddhist classics. Students will focus their study on classical texts in the Buddhist tradition. It is a program designed for students who are interested in Buddhism, and for monastics, for religious workers, and for lay practitioners. This program combines studying as well as practice. At DRBU, we're extremely excited, truly. We're really excited to be working on these 2 new programs. And we really believe that these programs will allow DRBU to further fulfill Shifu's vision in education. So if you're interested in our new program, please stop by our booth, which is directly behind the big tent, when you have a chance.
And you'll sing the song?
No.
Thank you for sharing the song and the idea that study and practice of wisdom are important to help us work towards saving the world. Our next speaker is also an alumnus of the Developing Virtue Boys School, and Wayne Chen. After graduating from college, he worked for several years in a global management consulting firm before returning to contribute his talents in realizing the Master's vision for DRBU. He is now the Director of Development. Let's welcome Wayne.
Thank you for the introduction. Let's see. I will here share a few remarks about the two new programs. And then, and its exciting aspect of it. For the past 2 to 3 years, the team at the Dharma Buddhist University, DRBU, we've been looking at the landscape of higher education in this nation. We look at, as Dr. Rohan mentioned earlier, the theological model, the Buddhist studies model, the psychology model, and the area study model. We looked at all the major universities and the quote-unquote the Buddhist university currently. And we discover that out of all these established model and deeply reflect on where we come from as an institution, as what Shifu had left us, what attribute, what essence do we want to keep and introduce and incorporate in the new program? And then we are very excited here, as Stacy mentioned earlier, we now have reached a solution that's, as Stacy just briefly described, that's 2 degrees based on studying of primary text. So under this new model, we allow the faculty and the student to access the sutras, the shastras, the primary, major primary great books directly. So this is something quite important. This is to say that by studying the wisdom directly of Shurangama Sutra, Avatanska Sutra, and so on and so forth, as the main experience of an undergraduate degree. Now, as we're looking forward for the university for the next 2 to 3 years, even though we've been operating under the auspice of the state approval, we are about to embark on the next aspect of next phase of the university by going after a WASC approval, meaning an accredited university with this recognition from other universities and approval. Therefore, our students, once they complete a degree here, their degree and the credit could be accepted by other universities or graduate schools or employers. You also allow them to be recognized by the government for the institution, open ourselves to a wide variety of resources that's currently not available to us. So as we embark on this journey, and a part of self-study and reflection requires the faculty and administrator to actually articulate Buddhist principles and the teaching of the wisdom into the construct of a modern education framework. So what does that mean? At one time I actually realized that in the group discussion, we're actually articulating Buddhism, introducing it into the modern world. So these are ancient principles and wisdoms now that we need to articulate it, translate them, quote unquote, and then explain it in the modern education construct. That process is Dharma coming to the West. Is allowing people to understand what Buddhist principle is and what the principle of wisdom is. And we can use that as the basis of our university and our program. So that itself is a very exciting prospect. And after, with this primary text model, another aspect of this is that we will be the first such a Buddhist organization, a Buddhist university, to mount that program that's truly integrated and authentic and honest to Buddhism. And then we believe that after we achieve accreditation, we will become standards for other Buddhist universities to come, and we intend to set the standard high. So, in closing, I want to mention that I'm really blessed and I feel privileged to be working with an outstanding group of faculty and administrators, and many of people are on the stage here and in the audience today. It's that we have a cross-section of 2 or 3 generations of senior disciples and younger people, and learning and trying to recreate in the spirit and the environment where the Shifu founded this place. So I just want to let people know that we're about to announce these 2 new programs. This is actually our first weekend to talk to this larger group people, and as well as people on the web to saying that we're about to launch. Stay tuned and come and ask us questions and stop by our booth and pick up more information. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Wayne, for sharing with us the inspiring debut development process. I would like to now introduce our first speaker from Instilling Goodness and Developing Virtue Schools. Dao Master Heng Yin is principal of the girls' school. She's well loved and respected by the students, teachers, and members of the community. Under her leadership, the school has undergone significant growth and development. Let's welcome Dao Master Heng Yin.
So I'm going to just talk a little bit about why the Venerable Master named the schools Instilling Goodness and Developing Virtue. So Instilling Goodness, it's the elementary school, and Developing Virtue is the secondary school, and Dr. Verhoeven did touch on it earlier. The Master observed that modern education focuses exclusively on teaching knowledge and skills, and as a result, children are not developing in a holistic way and are often morally and spiritually lost. The Master hoped to use basic virtues to protect their spiritual natures by guiding children to be filial to their parents, something that many people these days have forgotten about. Having grown up in the United States, when I first heard about the concept of repaying the kindness of our parents, I was intrigued and moved. And I believe that many people, when they hear about this, it is a very novel concept, and yet it makes so much sense. So our elementary school emphasizes filial piety or family reverence, whereas the high school advocates both filial piety or family reverence and also citizenship to the greater community, which, as Stacy mentioned, is to contribute to the society, to do something that will make a difference in the world. The Master stressed that whether in high school or the university, students should study in order to understand the principles of how to be a good person who benefits society, and not study only in order to gain fame and profit. What is more important, the Master emphasized that the words instilling goodness and developing virtue do not just refer to students. They also refer to the teachers and the staff, because in the process of teaching, we can develop virtue and goodness. When our students misbehave or don't listen to us, then we know that our virtue is insufficient, and maybe our patience too, and we need to cultivate ourselves more. Teaching is actually a great form of spiritual practice and cultivation, and students can be our best teachers because they always point out our flaws and what we need to work on. I have been with the schools for the past 10 or so years and have seen it about double in size, roughly, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work in the schools because it is always fresh and new every day, and also we get to be together with these wonderful young people, and I discovered that, you know, the inner nature of everyone, especially young people, is an awakened nature, and so our job is to rediscover that and to preserve that. I'm going to now introduce another teacher in our school who has been very passionate about realizing the Venerable Master's vision for education. This is Jin Zhishi. She has been a teacher at Developing Virtue School for many years and has also been involved in curriculum planning, both for the schools and the university. She is currently working on her doctorate of education at Columbia University, And she has done a lot in the recent years to enhance the curriculum and student life at our schools. So let's welcome Ginger Shi.
Venerable Master and esteemed assembly, many of us has been inspired by the Venerable Master to teach and to promote education. He has indeed left an invaluable educational legacy for all of us. Teaching is a sacred profession. At the schools, we promote volunteer teaching. By volunteering to teach, or with a modest remuneration, teachers teach for the sake of teaching, and not for the sake of name and profit. It is said, who the teacher is more important than what the teacher teaches. What truly impacts student is not what the teacher says, but how he or she acts. We may talk all we want, but if we cannot walk the talk, they will not remember. I believe that this is one of the reasons Venerable Master Hua is such a deep influence on all of us. He is truly a model that walks the talk. Our school is accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. We have a college preparatory curriculum, and thus far, 100% of our graduates attend college. To nurture students to be a whole person, our curriculum has 4 areas of emphasis: academics, virtues, spirituality, and global awareness. At the City of 10,000 Buddhas, education happens inside and outside of the classroom. As an African proverb says, it takes a village to raise a child. This is the spirit that we embrace at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. The community of practitioners here with whom the students interact with play a significant role in the education of our students. All of us is a role model for the students. In such a conducive environment and surrounded by caring people who are invested in the education of the younger generation, students can uncover and develop their inherent potentials, their inherent goodness, and can be responsible leaders of the world. As you can see, the schools at the City of 10,000 Buddhas promote a sacred process and experience. Students, teachers, and members of the community are always in the process of learning, of becoming, of instilling goodness and developing virtue. Always in a dynamic process of mutually urging one another to strive towards developing our inherent wisdom. I hope more people will join in this sacred educational journey, and together we can strengthen Buddhism's presence in the world. Amitabha. I would now like to invite Mr. Nakula Ertz, an alumni of Developing Virtue Boys School, who upon graduating from UC Berkeley, returned to be a dorm supervisor and teacher at the boys' school. His son also attends the boys' school. Both his wife and mother are also teaching in the school. This is one of the numerous examples of how families are invested in the work of education at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. Let's welcome Mr. Nakula Ertz.
Dharma Masters. I first came here when I was 11 years old. My parents were not from the Buddhist tradition, but this was actually the first school that I went to. My parents told me that I would be coming to Ukiah for an interview to go to a Buddhist school. So that night I was dreaming. So that night I was imagining Zen gardens and I don't know, just kind of this more, I guess, more Japanese style, I guess, right? But my parents come. I get out of the car. I see John Chu. He sends us to an office, and Marty Verhoeven's there, and Roger Kellerman. They're both very serious. They give me a passage to read in a very difficult book. And I was sure, I was like, uh-oh, I didn't pass this test. But somehow or another, they allowed me to come to the school, and from that time, it's had so many impressions on me. So in the years after graduating from the Developing Virtue Secondary School, I have been appreciating the many lessons I have learned. Being a product of Master Xuanhua's secondary school, I've had the great fortune to be taught by some of his early disciples. Many of them are here today. These disciples were directly taught by their master, Master Xuanhua, and through this system, we as students were able to taste the fruit of Master Xuanhua's philosophy and culture with, I guess, now so much discipline. The scope of his teachings are very broad and simple. They cut through national and religious designations, yet they also include expectations that the schools will have to continue to work very hard in the future to achieve. The educational system that Master Xuanhua founded, to me, is analogous to a garden, a holistic garden, if you will. There are so many dedicated and hardworking gardeners who are planting so many teachings, at the same time slowly and surely removing some of the weeds. So the teachers of the schools have planted many gardens over these years. We have 5 to 10 students graduating from the boys' school every year. And over these past 35 years, it starts to make a dent on the human population. Okay. I hope that the schools can continue to plant these gardens, because this is what's going to affect the world in a positive manner. So, thank you.
Thank you, Nakula, for that sincere speech. Next, we will have Miss Alicia Pagan, who is a recent graduate of our high school and has attended our school also since she's about 8. She'll be attending Wellesley College in the fall. Let's welcome Alicia.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as Jing Jishu said, I am Alicia Pagan, and I just graduated DVGS in June. So my journey began when I was in 3rd grade, and I went to Instilling Goodness Elementary School. Even then, I could recognize how different the school was and how dedicated the teachers were to our education. I believe one of the greatest aspects of our school is that you can talk to the teachers and they will listen and they will help and they will support you. And that is how I was able to participate in many activities. And for example, in 9th grade, my friends and I were very moved after learning the multiple disasters in Uganda, a country in Africa, and we really wanted to do something. Right away, we were supported by teachers and staff to guide us, to give presentations, to hold bake sales, and to write articles. And after that, our project grew and grew and grew. And luckily for us, this year, the program that we donated to, the children of Uganda, they were coming to the US. And we were able to bring them to CGTB for one day. And on that day, the whole entire community came together to help us to support what we have been supporting and to also help those children. Meeting those children was remarkable, a great experience. All of them are strong, lively, inspirational people. And I believe that with this help of the school and the principles that it taught me, it definitely pushed me to help these children and to support them so that they have a better future. Instilling goodness and developing virtue school has greatly influenced my goals in life. In the past 3 years, during spring break, the school organized a community service trip to Mexico. And going there was more than just building or painting houses or hosting a spring camp for the local children, but being there, you truly learn the gifts of unity and friendship. Although we couldn't speak Spanish or communicate to the children, we did form bonds through laughter and sign language and motion. And by the end of the trip, I was left with an overwhelming sense of unity of the world, and I had the pit feeling that everyone in the world could be friends with some effort. The school here extremely influenced on who I want to be in the future. In Buddhism, we are taught to cherish our blessings, not to waste, not to take others' lives, and to give what we can to help others. I found a strong connection from these principles to being environmental. The same concepts can apply. I need to cherish the resources the earth has given me, not to waste materials around me, support all living beings that are suffering, and help the planet that is under so much distress. Through Buddhism and the guidance of teachers, I have found a passion on being a better person and helping the school become more green. The past few years, I have supported the school on projects to be green, such as reusing printed paper and purchasing a solar panel in our school. To say that I am not influenced by DVGS and the Buddhist community after attending for so many years would be a complete lie. It's because this place is such a combination of wonderful and amazing things. I have grown so much under the nurture of my surroundings and this peaceful environment, my caring teachers and friends. Through Buddhism and the teachings from the school, I have definitely found a passion to become a positive influence in the world. Thank you. Amitofo.
Thank you, Alicia. We wish her an exciting college journey, and hope that she'll return to tell us her stories in college. To close the panel, we'd like to invite Dr. Marty Verhoeven to speak.
You never ask a professor to give a closing remark. There's only 2 minutes left. Actually, there's a wonderful video that we're going to end with that Christine, who's been sitting there, you're probably wondering, who is she? She's neither alumnus nor direct disciple, but she's becoming both. But she's wonderfully skilled at graphics and pulling graphic material together. That's all I can say about it because I know nothing about it. But she's put together a wonderful transference of merit video that some of you may have seen. So that will close our program. I just want to say, excuse me? Way back, when we were discussing the city with Shifu, and all of us had the same impression, I think Hung Sure relates this to, it's too big. It's just too big. And Shifu kept telling us, no, you're too small, you're too small, you're really too small. I've seen, look at today, it used to be the gymnasium for the state hospital. Already it's adorned with 10,000 Buddhas, and look what's happening here. This is transformation occurring. We're already reaching limits of population hold here that we're starting to see, and the Master is absolutely right. What I want to say today is that this is not a closed place. It is open. It's meant to be for all living beings. Shifu said, this is my gift to the world. So, two ways to look at it. You can come here and get. You can get Dharma, you can get teachings, you can have access to teachings you probably won't find any place on the planet. But also, maybe more importantly, it's a chance to come and give. There's all kinds of opportunities here to move your careers and move your life in a new direction towards giving. Gardening, education, translation, interfaith dialogue, monastic life. All of these things are open. The 4 legacies are open-ended and rich. I won't say this too directly because they get embarrassed, but many of the young people up here have given up very lucrative and promising careers that they could have had given their advanced degrees to come back and give. That, to me, is very inspiring. It's really at the heart of what Shifu was about. So if you think about it, you want to imagine something for your life to change where you actually get meaning and you can go to sleep at night and say, I've done something that matters. I'm not just totally stressed out and trying to figure out how I go from day to day. You might think of one of these careers. I prefer myself teaching, but that's the one I'm called to. Shifu once said that translation is the work of devas. But also that teaching is the work of bodhisattvas. And you can teach by not saying a word here. Somebody else mentioned that. It's embodiment that's a teaching. So think of this place as a place to reimagine your life, imagine your career, and maybe return to roots. And then we'll do the video. I want to tell Nakula on that passage. Roger and I got down, and Roger says, here's this really difficult passage. I don't understand it. And I said, I don't either. Why don't we ask this kid who's coming in to explain it to us? Okay. Christine, do you want to say something about the video? And
okay, so as Dr. Verhoeven just said, today we were going to be closing our talk with the dedication of merit. A dedication of merit is a Dharma method that allows us to share all the blessings and the merit that we have earned with every being in the world. Simply make a wish and send the goodness out with a single mind. When all of us gathered here today make this wish in unison, our collective spirit of giving sends a prayer of well-being throughout the world to all creatures as far as our minds extend. So here at CTTB, we have both a Chinese and an English version of our dedication of merit. Today we're going to share the English version with the guitar and vocals by Reverend Heng Shi. Accompanying the dedication are images of the Venerable Master's educational legacy, which we all learned about today, this afternoon, and which we celebrate here on our campus at CTTB every day. Amitabha. If somebody could please dim the lights. Thank you.
And see how hands and hearts can find in giving you great compassion, wisdom, and joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise.
That's it. There's no secret, nothing to follow. What is happening next? Does someone want to announce?
Yeah, next there's a translation panel at 4 o'clock. So there's a 10-minute break.
To a place where people don't speak Chinese, what to do. Now, this was not purely an inspiration. This was Shifu's hard work. When he was in Manchuria, in the Dao De Hui, the Society for Virtue and the Path, as a young man, the elders in the Dao De Hui invited him to lecture on the sutras because clearly his wisdom was already surpassing his peers, even adults. So Shifu had this early propensity for looking into the Buddha's texts to find wisdom. Shifu came to the United States, and as we've heard today, we've finally heard these stories from the people who were there making that history. The actual names, I'd never heard of the place on Clay Street or the early 1959 monastery that Madalena and Stella set up. Now we've heard these stories. Shifu said he was lecturing, this is before the Buddhist lecture hall, and he said there were people who came in to listen. There were two of them. One put his feet up on the table and went to sleep. The other one just went to sleep where he sat, So that was the early vigor with which our teacher taught the Dharma. He didn't give up with this kind of lack of response. He waited for conditions to ripen for young people who did speak the world's languages to come and help with that work. And as we heard this morning, it was done by taking a Chinese-English dictionary, looking at the sutra, picking out a character, looking it up in the dictionary. How 辛苦 is that? How did one character, that says yi, look at that, yi, it's one. Wow, it's also unity. Wow, it's also unified. How do we plug it into the sutra? And then you have two characters, 3, 4. People began to translate Buddhist sutras. That's how difficult it was at the beginning. During the 90-day Shurangama Sutra Summer Assembly, Shifu began lecturing once a day, realized he wasn't going to finish before the summer was over, lectured twice a day, realized he wasn't going to finish before this, he lectured 3 times a day. Sometimes the translators wouldn't show up, Shifu translated for himself. Today, Dhamma lecture, everybody needs great wisdom. Everybody must change, Shifu would say, and we would nod. So that's how it began. That's how difficult it was. Now, Shifu, for 30 years, lectured every single night. Thursdays were student lecture nights. So you could say Shifu took a break on Thursdays. Not really. He would come down to listen to the students lecture. He would sit in the audience and just sit there and listen. So you're the student, you're lecturing, and here's Shifu staring at you, nodding. Please lecture, And then he would, at the end, he would say, 大家觉得怎么样啊? 谁讲得最好啊? Who lectured best? What do you all think? So, and then on Saturdays and Sundays when people were off work, he would lecture twice. So we had 4 lectures on the weekdays, and then 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. This is tireless devotion to bringing the words of the Buddha to the West. Now, pretty early on, we realized that we were not going to be able to memorize it all. So we started to use tools to record Shifu's lectures, and we used Sony reel-to-reel tape recorders, if anybody remembers. Those were the tools. They were reliable, they were sturdy. I forget what they're called, B-22 or something, the Sony reel-to-reel tape recorders. That was high-tech at the time. And someone would sit beside Shifu and record, and then Shifu would lecture for 10 or 15 minutes. He would stop and do whatever work Shifu was doing, and then the translator would run it back, and then and then all of you good and wise advisors, the Avatamsaka Sutra is the Sutra of the Dharma realm. And that's how it happened. And we would translate it and then take notes and then translate it at night and have it by the next morning. That was Shifu's instructions. And we have individuals here who were very much a part of that process, who actually were doing that work. So some of our volunteers have compiled some images, which I'll just go quickly through because there are many other panelists here who want to speak. There's a legacy of great translators: Venerable Kumarajiva, Dharma Master Xuanzang, Qingliang Guoshi, Master Cheng Guan, Xi Xue Shikshananda, who translated the second version of the Avatamsaka Sutra. And Master Xuanhua, our teacher, copied the methods of the ancients by saying, you know, a lot of the Buddhist sutras, there were some. The Sixth Patriarch Sutra existed in 2 or 3 different versions before the Master came. The Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra were popular, even the Lotus Sutra. But by and large, those sutras had been translated by one person, either a scholar who was doing it for research or possibly to get reputation. Sometimes the sutras are translated by missionaries who wanted to present Buddhism, we hope, in a favorable light, possibly not. So Shifu said, you know, the way the ancients did it, they used committees. For example, Master Xuanzang had up to 800 people in the room as he translated. And he would have primary translators who were good in... Do we need those lights, by the way? Did those come? Can we turn those back off? It's better without them, right? Yeah, could we turn those lights back off, please? I don't know who did that. Somebody reading their notes over there, and then you get a flashlight. So, over here were the primary translators who could read Sanskrit, and they would interpret these scrolls. And then they would have an editor who would take the edited primary Sanskrit to Chinese, and the editor would listen again, make sure nothing was mistaken, nothing was left out, nothing was duplicated. He would hand it to a polisher who was maybe no good in Sanskrit, but was really good in Chinese, who could put it into fluent, literate, beautiful Chinese text. Then a certifier would say, this translation tallies with the Buddha's mind above and with living beings below. And that would be the four committees in China. So Shifu set us up with 4 committees that way. We had a translator, editor, polisher, and certifier. This was unheard of before. And this all started from people who knew no Chinese to begin. So this is the way Shifu would say, my bun de fazi, my stupid methods, my mind-dead methods, which means honest and simple and true, and not sophisticated, but genuine. Day after day, he lectured. Day after day, our Chinese language skills increased. The International Institute for the Translation of Buddhist Texts came along, courtesy of Shenjiazhen Jushi, 1973. This was the grand opening of the BTTS, and you can see all the guests who came. Oops, don't want to do that. Come back here. This is all of the Sangha at the time, and Master Miao Jing is here. So that's Washington Street. That's the IITBT, which also became the girls' school, Washington Street. Yeah, that's early on, and it's no longer in the association, but Shifu would go there on Sundays to lecture. So that's the early ITI. Here is how it was done. Again, Shifu would lecture. This is the early days in Gold Mountain. We used couches and whatever we could find to meditate on. Shifu would lecture also on texts that he would write. This is the Shui Jing Hui Tian Lu, the biographies of the patriarchs. Trying to puzzle it out. There's Heng Shun before he left home. Right there, that's you, dude. No, man, I can't believe it. What do you mean? That's not me. No. Before your time. That's not you? You kidding? That's you. That's Heng Shun. Anyway. So this is how it was done. You know, the motive is what? What did the Buddha say? Do I understand what the Buddha said? That's the motive that would lead a young man to turn on a light so that at night he could individually look into the Buddha's text to find out what they said. Vajrabodhi came along. This is the Orthodox, they say, the Journal of the Orthodox, we don't use that word now, of Orthodox Dharma in the West. And I must say, if anybody is looking for a PhD dissertation topic, someone could profitably investigate these verses and mantras and gathas and pictures on the cover of Vajrabodhi. Shifu said these images are put in that cover not by chance. He said that it's precisely this magazine with that image on the cover that keeps the demon kings from coming out and running amok, he said. So he linked, Shifu in his wisdom, linked the cover of a publication with the pacification of negativity in the world. How much did he value the printed word? They say you set up merit, you set up virtue, you establish, print your words. So he saw these as so important. Vajrabodhi printed the daily schedule. I wish we had more time. We'll come back and look at this later. These are the translators of BTTS. Shifu published their images and their names. He paid very close attention to Vajrabodhi. The staff members of Sabha wish our readers a Happy New Year. It was all put together in those days with X-Acto pens and publishing glue. You know, that glue that you stick on that you can restick. It was done by hand. No such thing as a computer. This is the late Liu Jisung, Mr. Liu, teaching a class in calligraphy. He was an advisor to Vajrabodhi. Early cover of the Shami Lu Yi. I might mention that cover. He's not here right now. That cover was hand carved by Master Heng Lai. That's a woodblock print of the monks. I've got to go quickly. The first of our publications, first BTTS publication, Pure Land and Chan Dharma Talks. Shi Pa Jie Bu Li Nian Xin, we did it ourselves on a typewriter. Then our books improved. They became, they went from the hand-done, hand-illustrated, hand-bound, to a little more sophisticated presentation in the 90s. And then even more so. Here's the Fa Hua Jing, the early version and the later version of the Fa Hua Jing, version number 2 in terms of presentation. The Fa Hua Jing again. Then the ITI, International Translation Institute, came along in Burlingame, 1989. The grand opening, the mayor there to cut. And by the 90s, our publications were this many. You'll hear today that we have 400 titles out. So, got to go quickly. Let me show you those. If you would like to know
let's see here, sorry. If you would like to see all of the translations of the Buddhist Text Translation Society, please visit bttsonline.org. This is a website run by kind-hearted volunteers who've been doing this for a very long time, putting it together, the halls. And it has our latest translation, the second edition of the Shurangama Sutra. It's a very nice, informative website, and you can also purchase them there. Now, we have a long way to go in terms of distribution. So, let me say it again, BTTS Online, Buddhist Text Translation Society. bttsonline.org is how you'll find these. And we need to say that our efforts to distribute the translations that we do have really lagged far behind. We still have yet to investigate e-texts, and we don't have a contract with a national distributor. Our books are on Amazon.com, but not that many and not very tidy, not very systematic. So there is a great deal of work to be done. And if anyone has skills, abilities, interest in propagating the Buddha Dharma through texts, we definitely want to talk to you, because the distribution of texts, once they're translated, is not up to speed yet. We still have a long way to go. A couple ideas. When you touch a Buddhist sutra, like the Avatamsaka Sutra here, you're touching a document that has been in the world for 2,500 years. Name me anything else in this world that is this old and still alive. Somebody will say, my mother-in-law. No, they won't say that. This sutra is a living document from timeless past. The source of these sutras is precepts and samadhi in a human mind. They are a representation of the wisdom that comes from a purified, concentrated human mind, nowhere else. The sutras came through all these different periods. 49 years the Buddha taught, and they've been collected and gathered into these 5 different periods. We're not going to go into this now, but a human mind free of ignorance, free of duality, free of desire, free of bias, a mind in samadhi is capable of speaking these texts. Now, what's so interesting is it's still an open canon. That is to say, as soon as any one of you enters that state of wisdom and compassion comparable to the Buddha's, you are empowered to speak sutras. It's not delivered by revelation, God coming down to Mount Sinai and giving the law to Moses on a tablet. It's not limited. It's not a closed canon. That's another story. Sutras are wisdom's voice. You could say they're inhuman because they're beyond humanity, and yet they are also the perfection of humanity. So there's so much to say about these, and I want you to hear from everyone else who's prepared. But look at some of these old pictures. Here is Bhikshuni Heng Xian, surrounded by what? Dictionaries. Oh my. The practice of translation is the practice of turning pages and looking at print. Finding out how have the ancients done it. We are standing on the shoulders of millennium of giants who have been translating from language to language to language. The fact that we have them now in all these languages is Shifu's vision come to life. This is Shifu's vow among us. Here we are. This is an American translator. Classic image. This is Bhikshu Hung Bai, Bruce Munson. How wonderful. So I wanted to, here we are. This is a picture. I should have shown you. Here we are, IBM Selectric, Sony reel-to-reel tape recorder. This is how we started. Now we're so wired online. When we do our translation, the Avatamsaka project, we're using, I wanted to show you here. There's, here, when we do our Avatamsaka translation project that we do every Monday morning, we're using minimum 4 of these off-the-shelf technologies to link translators from around the world. On a good day, we have London, Paris, Taipei, Los Angeles, Oakland, and people who are too lazy in Ukiah to get up, they just go online, you know, all joining in together to translate sutras. And it's David Rounds, who was central in the production of the second Shurangama, asked, we were talking, we have interns coming in from the girls and boys school to watch us translate. And they come back. And they come back and they sit there and they're interested. You can see we haven't got them contributing yet. They're still not quite able to contribute. But they're there week after week. And why are these girls coming? Why are the schoolgirls coming? And David said, you know, I think it's because they like to watch the adults have fun with the Dharma. That's it. When you translate sutras, you're having fun with the Dharma. At the same time, you're touching the Buddha's wisdom inherent in all of us. How wonderful is that? So, speaking as somebody who, in a very strange way, all of my progress, all of my career as a monk has been centered on not just a teacher, but also a book. In some strange way, I came to Gold Mountain Monastery 2 weeks after the Avatamsaka Sutra began to be lectured. And my pilgrimage was focused on the Avatamsaka, and I'm now thrilled to be able to translate it. How strange. Shifu said, sutras are like a magnet. We living beings are like iron filings. We're drawn to that magnet life after life. So I think that may be where we all meet, is following the Avatamsaka Sutra. I suspect that is the case. And the last thing I wanted to show you, which is really fun, is ta-da! There we are from this morning. We'll do the Ken Burns effect here. How wonderful to have the elders here with us. And the shamis, knees, shami knees and the shamis. And all the robe colors. Oh, oh! And look at the Theravada bhikkhus together. I've got one more for you. This one has the banner. There we are. What's all? Okay, Dharmesta Yin, Amitofo. Thank you.
So I just wanted to share a few words of personal experience in being involved in translation. I remember when I first encountered an English sutra, I realized that the Dharma is such a precious thing and how rare it is to encounter, especially if you don't read Chinese. And the Venerable Master's vow was to share the Dharma as widely as possible. And the work of sutra translation will impact people for centuries and millennia, allowing them to know the methods for reaching samadhi and liberation. To develop translation talent in the early days, I heard that the Master encouraged everyone to learn many different languages. Most of the BTTS volunteers are not professional translators. We've learned by doing and by working together to make up for each other's deficiencies. It's important to be both a volunteer and a practitioner, I feel, because then you have the right spirit for interpreting the texts. And then the Venerable Master set up 8 guidelines and 4 committees that ensure that the work done is based on collective wisdom and not based on selfish reasons. The translation process is a wonderful way to learn from others and work together. I'm really grateful to those who have mentored me over the years as I learned classical Chinese, who explained Buddhist concepts to me and helped to research Sanskrit terms. translation work gives us the opportunity to work closely with the Dharma as we struggle to figure out the meaning of every word and sentence in order to translate it. Through translating, we realize the nuances that different cultures and historical periods bring to the Dharma, while at the same time appreciating its timeless quality of helping us to overcome our afflictions and develop compassion and wisdom. BTTS has about 400 publications in English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, French, Italian, Dutch, German, and Japanese, over 250, and Polish. 250 of these are in Western languages. Vajra Bodhi C, monthly journal of the CTTB, has been published every month since 1970. Although it is not flashy and glossy, it is a faithful report of the Dharma events and teachings in DRBA, and many volunteers are also involved in its production. There's a booth for the VBS right outside, and also a book distribution booth, so everyone can go pick up some books. There's still so much to do in translating, publishing, and distributing the sutras in all languages. We've only accomplished maybe 0.1% of the Venerable Master's vow, and we need more volunteers to help. I regret that in certain areas we haven't done a good job of organizing the volunteer system. Those who are involved have been working very hard with limited manpower, and we hope to change that now and open up the opportunity for more people to get involved. Now we're going to ask some of those who have been translating or coordinating the translation of sutras to share their insights. First of all, Dharma Master San, we would like to invite him. He is in charge of the Vietnamese translation of all the sutras and commentaries and Dharma talks. And we would like to invite him to share a few words.
As you all heard and all know that by meeting with the Venerable Master through direct contact direct with him or through his teachings or by knowing his life stories, people are transformed in a positive way. So, and also one his vow is to have the Buddha Dharma or the sutras translated to many world languages, as many as possible. So as his disciple, so as we are his disciples, and also as a Vietnamese myself, we formed a Vietnamese translation group, and we tried our best to have to translate as many sutras, many Sufu teachings, many Dharma talks to Vietnamese as much as possible, and have them published also, make them accessible to the Vietnamese worldwide and to the Vietnam as well. So far we most of Sufu Dharma talks, the 6 volumes of the Dharma talks, as well as most of the smaller sutras, such as 6 Patriarch Sutras, Diamond Sutras, Her Sutra, Earth Law Sutras, etc., have been translated and published in Vietnamese, in US, in Europe, and also in Vietnam as well. And I would like also mention that Sufu's teachings, Sufu's commentaries on the sutras made such impact to the Vietnamese worldwide, especially in Vietnam, where they, they don't, most of them they don't speak the language, either Chinese or English, and also it's not easy to do to access to Sufu books, because in Vietnam, you got to go through the government religious affair in order to publish books and stuff like that. But we try our best to have Sufu's book available there, and as a result, now they use Sufu's books as a matter of teaching in a Buddhist academy there. and also for the yearly Ren retreat, which is from the April, from the Buddha's, the Wesak, and until the Yulampana, the 3-month Ren retreat. They also use Shifu's books. For example, the sutras on the 42 sections, the exhortation to reinforce the body, mind, etc. For their material teachings or studies for the monastics. And about 4 years ago, when about 500 monks and nuns graduated from the Buddhist Academy, they will receive. Each of them received a book called Earth Thought Sutra with the explanation as a gift, as a graduation gift. So also, as I mentioned that one book made such impact in Vietnam, and so to the Vietnam's the Buddhist, and also to Vietnam as a whole, is the book called The Little Innocent Ghost. Because the number of in Vietnam, Vietnam is one of the countries that they have one of the most cases of abortion. And so that book provides a Buddhist point of view regarding abortion, the result of abortion, and how to resolve the problem. So the book is really make impact. Why I know it's make impact? Because when we publish them over there, not through proper channel, of course, because got through the people read it in the MP3, they go to the MP3 and make CD, and one temple they copy it to 50,000 copies in one place, 50,000 copies, and it's gone just like that. And and as you see that every year the Vietnamese Buddhist friends come in here to for the Shifu's Nirvana Memorial ceremony increases, I think. Not decreases, but even increases. So I think, even they don't speak the language. So I think Shifu's teaching has such impact to them. Also, we have a website where we list all the current and the past translation, so people can get access to it, and also all the events, CCTV, the events are listed there, and all the lectures, not just by Shifu, but by other Dharma masters as well. Especially the journals, the 3-step one about journals, and the news from truth collectors are well received, very well received by the Vietnamese committees. And so we not just try to translate Shifu's or the sutras from Chinese to Vietnamese, but also we try to translate English books like 3-step one about to Vietnamese as well. And the first book, the 3-step one bao, also very well received, and we just read it in MP3. And I just last month I received a email. And there are 3 Buddhist academies. They would like to receive 2,000 MP3 of that 3-step one bao as using for the sanghas there, the Buddhist sanghas there, as they have much teaching material, and so as inspirational, and how the Buddha teaching, living teachings of the Buddha, and in there we have many quotes from the Athamsaka Sutra, and speaking of Athamsaka Sutra, we are now focusing on the 3 main sutras: the Lotus Sutra, the Shukagama Sutra, and also the Athamsaka Sutra, to have them translated into Vietnamese, especially with Shifu commentary, because even though Vietnam is a Buddhist country and those sutras have been translated, but with Shifu commentaries, more people would be appreciated the text and would be more benefit from the teachings of those sutras. So, but we wish that more people would be involved in the Vietnamese translation project, either translate English book from English to Vietnamese, or Chinese to English to Vietnamese, or help us to transfer, to make it, to propagate them, to give to friends, and make it many people know about the simple teachings as much as possible. Also, we have this newsletter is called Bodhi High. Just mean Puti High. We model after Vajra Bodhi Si, Chinkang Puti High, which is so small, so we got the Puti High. And since 1991, it's a monthly magazine. Now it's quarterly, but 24 or 28 pages long. And here we also list, simple teaching, Kashilu, and all those translation that we have so far, and so Dharma events, so people know. But now we also have the website called chùavangphật.org, and if people interested, they can come, go in and find everything, the past translation, the current corrections, the current translations, so all the Dharma events that we have here. So.
Thank you, Dharma Master Hun San, for sharing about the Vietnamese translation, and also about the impact that Venerable Master's teachings have had in Vietnam. The next speaker we'd like to invite is Jing Den Shi. She has been in charge of the European Languages Translation Department, and she herself is a fluent speaker of Spanish.
Good afternoon, Venerable Master, Dhamma Master, and all Dhamma friend. I'm going to talk briefly about my experience on translation, and also to make a report on the translation's progress in European languages and Spanish. My first encounter with Buddha Dharma made me full of Dhamma joy. This happened in Venezuela more than 10 years ago. And at that time, I asked myself how I could bring this Dharma to Spanish speakers. And with this hope in my mind for several years to spread the Buddha Dharma to South America, and there was a chance for me to come to the city of 10,000 Buddha. And I got the chance to start my translation work for BTTS, and it has been for more than 10 years. As Dhamma Master Yin said, we are not professional in translation. Spanish translation is still in small scale. So I'm going to mention several points of our difficulty. Maybe those who are not getting involved in translation have an idea about how the translation going. It was very difficult for us to find out the accurate words and expressions to communicate the idea of Venerable Master due to differences between countries in terms of culture, languages, custom, point of view, and others. For example, when I was in Avatamsaka Vihara Monastery, I got the chance to talk a group of young people and a university student and share the discussion of the Sastra, the 100 Dharma. And in the Sastra, one of the students, university student, it was his turn to learn a passage of the book. And the passage said, Vasubandhu Bodhisattva, the elder brother, asked the younger brother to read the sutra for him, the Mahayana Sutra. Otherwise, when he died, he would not be able to close the eyes. And after he read this passage, he said, I don't understand it. How come he cannot close the eyes? And at that time, we have this sastra already translated, but not published yet. And I got the sign. I have to insert footnote in this part of the sutra, of the sastra. So we try to insert as much as we can the footnote and increase our glossary for our readers' understanding. But talking to the people help us to make them to understand more about Venerable Master Dharma. And for example, in Earth Store Sutra is one of the sutras that I'm working on, and I was discussing with my team about the name of the Earth Store Bodhisattva, and we couldn't to get agreement to find out the expression for the name itself of the Bodhisattva. So at the end, we choose the Sanskrit name, the original one, for our translation, as well as other words were preserved in the original Sanskrit. Also, we have to go back to the tapes to listen to the explanation of Venerable Master and clarify the meaning of the text, and as well as the Sanskrit scripture. And I realized that putting the Dharma into the practice in my daily life helped me to do a better job in the translation. And I can say that cultivation is part of my translation. The other point is I also try to keep the repetitions of Venerable Master. A lot of people know Venerable Master repeat a lot in his book. And also Venerable Master's manners to talk as much as I can, hoping that the readers have the feeling of attending Venerable Master's lectures directly. Although I have been working on translation and later on reviewing and editing for many years, however, I had to learn the publishing skills due to lacking of volunteers to cover the publishing area. And art is not my strong field. And I'm still learning how to develop an art mind in order to do a better work for publishing. And this is my big challenge. I'm very grateful to Dhamma Master who is teaching me in this area, because at the beginning, I was so rushing to finish the work. And of course, it was not a good work. And she made me to go over and over. And I'm doing the third time in the layout. And I'm very grateful because I have learned that I have to calm down my mind in order to do a good job. Okay. And at this moment, European languages and Spanish books occupy almost the 5% on the BTTS publishing. And it's almost nothing in comparison to Venerable Master's wishes on the propagating Dharma and on the translation. And most of these books are in Spanish. The books which are already translated, Dhamma Master Yin also mentioned, she mentioned already, but in the translation process now, we have in French 2 sutra, in Italian 1 sutra, in German 1 sutra. In Spanish, we have about 10 books in translation process. 10 books distributed to different translators, but only few of them we received the feedback of them. And waiting for reviewing and editing about 20 books. and 2 books in reviewing process and 1 in layout process. And I hope that this one will be finished for the end of this year, and I hope it goes for the printing at the end of the year. Our translators are from different countries of South America. However, we still need more volunteers to help on this task, which is too heavy for a team of few people. And I pray Buddha, Bodhisattva, Rainbow Master to bring us more people with this interest to reinforce our team, especially on the layout part. At the present, I'm trying to cover this part of the publishing process. So I welcome those who are interested to work on this area, and working on the translation, we can learn a lot the Buddha Dharma. In the audience here, if you have relative friends who can contribute for translation and layout work in foreign languages, especially in Spanish, please encourage them to join us on this important task. As we know, giving Dharma is the foremost among all kinds of giving. And I'm very grateful to Buddha, Bodhisattva, Rainbow Master, and the Dharma Master who gave me this opportunity to learn Buddha Dharma through translation works. And I also want to express my gratitude to all Dharma Master and others, friends, out of their compassion and patience, who taught me and are teaching me to get the deeper understanding in Dharma for translation and for the publishing works. What I can do is, I promise, I will do my best, and I'm sure with the effort of all together, we are able to bring the Buddha Dharma to the Hispanic population and other languages speakers. In this way, we are working to fulfill one of the Rainbow Master wishes, propagating Dharma in the world. And I was told the Rainbow Master next step is to South America. So we are working to prepare this material. Welcome all who are interested to work in this.
Okay. Following that advertisement for translators of European languages, we will have Jingjing Shi. She has been very active in translation. She was one of the key members of the Shurangama Sutra 2nd edition translation team, and also currently on the Avatamsaka Sutra translation team. So let's welcome Jingjing Shi.
Venerable Master, Dhamma Masters, and otherwise teachers, good afternoon. Are you all tired listening? I was hoping that the time will go over 5 so I don't have to speak, but we still have 5 minutes. So I'll briefly share my causes and conditions to join the Shurangama Sutra translation group. It was in fall 2004 when I signed up for a Shurangama Sutra class at DRBU. My goal was to learn classical Chinese because when I moved out of Taiwan at the age of 15, in order to learn English, I deliberately stopped speaking Chinese and reading Chinese. So over the years, I lost a lot of the Chinese speaking and writing skills. So coming in learning Buddhism, I understand in this community, you do need the Chinese language skills in order to understand the sutras. So by taking the Shurangama Sutra class, I was going to brush up my Chinese skills. And when I was studying the sutra with the class, I started getting stumbled over about what the sutra really means. I didn't really understand the classical Chinese. I didn't understand the plain Chinese either. So then I went to the English edition, tried to figure out what happened. So one of the very senior nuns suggested to me that, oh, do you know that they're retranslating the Shurangama Sutra? Why don't you go join them? And being a good student, I said, okay, I will go. So I went, and my preconceived notion of translation and realized at this point I haven't done any sutra translation. I've done some oral interpretation maybe. So I went in there with the old version of the Shurangama Sutra commentary. I don't know if people have seen the 2-volume one. Now we have the 9-volume, is that right? The 9-volume, the really clear, extensive ones. But in the old days, we have the 2-volume one. We didn't really have the full commentary. So I'll carry with my book back, and that was before I left the home life. I went into the translation room thinking, well, this should not be a problem. We just convert from one language to the other language, and if there's anything I don't understand, I would just go to the dictionary and look it up, and I'll be done with it. Fun. Okay, so I went in there, and as I said, into different kinds of various translation meetings over time, I realized that sutra translation isn't all that simple. There are many, many different factors to consider, different elements we have to incorporate. And if we can work through these factors and incorporate these elements, I realized that actually our wisdom will grow a little bit by little bit, and the cultivation will also improve. So what are these factors? The answer is, I'm not going to tell you. If you want to find out, I want to also make an advertisement that we have the Avatamsaka Sutra group translation on Monday. If you want to find out, come find out for yourself. It's going to be on Monday, 6:30 to 8 o'clock, second floor at the DRBU building, which is the building directly behind the big tent. So if you want to find out how you can grow your wisdom and improve your cultivation, come and join us on Monday morning, okay? Okay, so is it going to be a 6 or 6:30? 6? 6 o'clock? Okay, 6 o'clock. Okay, 6 o'clock. Sorry, mistake. 6 o'clock. Please come join us. So then, as I was sitting through these translation meetings, I realized how little I knew about the sutra, especially about the Shurangama Sutra, and how little I know of English, although I deliberately stopped speaking Chinese and tried to immerse myself in learning English, but that still was not enough, let alone the Chinese skills that I had at the time. I was very, very humbled in the group translation experience as I watched everyone contribute their ideas very patiently, very calmly, without getting into too many exciting discussions. And I really admire the translators at the time that when they run into something they can resolve, they wouldn't try to rush through it or push through it. They would say, okay, let's just take a pause and come back next week. And we would just make a remark. This is where we need to think more or work on it more and contemplate it more. But at the time, I was very, very impatient because prior to coming to the city of 10,000 Buddhas, as a volunteer, I worked in the IT field for 8 years. I was an IT consultant. And those of you who have worked in the IT field, you know how it goes. It's all about efficiency, efficiency, and efficiency. It's about going fast, faster, faster, and faster. So being trained in that kind of mindset, it was very hard for me to slow down. And so I had a lot of internal struggles. And I was wondering, why couldn't just get this passage and get it over with? Why do we have to have so many discussions? And we just really need to finish this. And I was really edgy like that. But then I kind of quietly observed what is going on inside my mind. And I realized that translation is also a part of cultivation. It's a transmission, it's cultivation, and it's transformation. As we learn to be more patient, learn to listen to each other very attentively, to really understand what the other person is trying to express, what are they trying to say, that the wisdom can be contributed as part of the translation. So throughout the process, I learned to be more patient, I learned to listen more attentively, and as we listen more attentively, our compassion and sympathy grows a little bit by little bit, day after day. I'm still not, I would not call myself very compassionate, but a little bit more compassionate than 8 years ago. So whether it's oral interpretation, simultaneous translation, or written simultaneous translation or written translation, I think all in all, if we put our hearts and mind into it, it really helps us to strengthen our character as a monastic and also as a cultivator. Because at the end, my conclusion was this translation work really touched my heart, and it lifts my spirits, and it changed my soul. So I think that's all I'm going to share. Omitofo.
So if you will all be patient, as we were just talking about patience, we have two more young and upcoming translators who would like to, we've invited to share a few words, and I think you will be very inspired by them. One of them is Michael Liu, and he attends our boys' school, and he has also been the Monday night translator for Jing Fan Shi, the Lotus Sutra, and has also contributed to translating several texts that haven't been published by the boys' school. So is Michael Liu? Okay, please come up. Let's give him.
So all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, the Venerable Master, all Dharma Masters, and all good knowing advisors, Amitabha. So before I make this speech, I'll just want to say something, that is that there won't be any advertisements in this speech, okay? So in 2007, my whole family moved here to California, to CETB, so I could study at the boys' school here. And I studied here, and after about 2 years, I had the opportunity to go up every Monday evening to translate the Dharma Flower Sutra. And so for these past 3 years, I've been doing this, and I've had this opportunity. And though it is just an hour long, I feel that I've received unique education during this time. So from this training of both reading from the book and learning other people's translation, and also translating myself, I've kind of received both worldly and transcendental education. And by benefiting others, I've also benefited myself. So first of all, both my Chinese and English have improved, and my enunciation has become more clear. I've learned how to react with different circumstances. So I've been able to, when I'm not prepared, I have to go and translate a Dharma talk, or I suddenly forget how to translate a certain phrase, and then I just have to kind of compensate it for it on the spot. Moreover, I've learned to accept failures and improve accordingly. So sometimes my throat goes hoarse, and then I can't speak anymore, and I have to have somebody else to help me. And lastly, I've learned to conquer my stage fright and not be too nervous in front of a large crowd. So when in the beginning I was nervous, my reaction was slow. I didn't know how to translate a lot of phrases, and my throat, as I said, would sometimes go hoarse. And this presented to me a lot of pressure and hardships. But from these experiences, I further understand the principles of the Venerable Master, as in his saying, which goes, everything is a test to see what you will do. If you do not pass the test, then you have to start anew. And so year after year comes, and it passes. And my brain has gradually become more flexible and quick, responding to different circumstances. And when I'm translating the Dharma Flower Sutra, or I listen to the Venerable Master's commentary, I come in contact with the Buddhist principles, and I kind of understand it more deeply by translating it into English. So I feel that this translation has really helped me to develop and to understand more about how I can try my best to contribute to others. And so in conclusion, I also feel very grateful that the Venerable Master and all the Dharma Masters have given me this opportunity to come up and translate and contribute to the monastery. And I also hope that everyone can also participate in the translation of Buddhist texts, thus fulfilling the Venerable Master's vow of translating Buddhist texts to all different languages. And in this way, I'm sure that the Venerable Master will surely be overjoyed. Thank you.
I forgot to mention that Michael Liu and his family moved from Maryland, which is a long ways away. But next we're going to hear from someone who came from even farther away. This is Fedde de Vries. He came from the Netherlands, just recently graduated from Leiden University in religious studies, and came to stay at CTTB for 6 months to help with translation. Let's welcome Fedde.
Venerable Masters, Dharma Masters, and all the virtuous assembly here. Thank you, Dharma Master Hangin, for the introduction. And what I'll do is I'll speak some more about myself. But I think that if I explain some more about myself and about my connection with the work of translating, that might actually be again an advertisement for translation and a small note this afternoon about the importance of translation. And about the joys of translating. So one of the things I recently realized was that actually, for me and my generation, the encounter with Buddhism is really through translations. I was able to read English texts which were fairly well digested translations of the Venerable Master talks or sutras by different groups, by BTS, but also other groups. And it was really through that basis that I didn't have to first learn different languages, but I could sort of directly read the texts and learn from them. And it is also the BTS translations from which I learned a lot of my English. And it was only recently that I realized that it was perhaps not always the best way to learn my English, because some Chinglish creeped in. And recently I've been listening and to some new English translation committees, and sometimes I try to catch out the Chinglish, and I'm surprised that about some of the things they omit. For example, bring forth the might of great compassion. I thought it was perfect English, but so I always keep on learning with translation. But also because I encountered the Buddha Dharma so much through translation. When I encountered or learned about the Venerable Master's vow of translating the Buddhist scriptures and the Dharma into all the world's languages, I myself was quite inspired, and I wanted to work on translation myself as well. And I started doing some translations into Dutch, which is my native tongue. And I'll have to repeat my refrain, which I almost repeat every time I come here and speak here, is that I really need to work harder on the Dutch translations, because I could have done more since 2007, which I think was when I began working on them. But it also brought me to learn some Chinese and some Sanskrit, which is learning languages is broadens your mind and broadens your understanding of the world, which is really inspiring. And also recently, besides the Dutch efforts, I've been studying to help out a little bit with English translations, as I said, and especially joining the Avatamsaka translations through Skype, all the way from Holland, was quite a sort of Avatamsaka state, because it's very, very inspiring to be sort of present at the city of 10,000 Buddhas while I was just come home from a long day and draining day of studying, and I would be all inspired again, hearing the peacocks and hearing the sound of the Dharma Masters and hearing the discussions about the Dharma as if it is really something that is alive. And through those translation sessions, it brought me back to that point. It is really alive. also the teamwork of translation. Not only by translating you help others because you pass on the Dharma, but you also study the Dharma yourself, and through teamwork you also learn from others, and you get drawn in because you can create a community, and you keep connected, and you keep wanting to come back and contribute more. So I think it should be very clear that I really think translation is important, and people can learn a lot from it, and keep in touch with the community if they want, and even through Skype, which is very convenient, and apparently even from Ukiah, so close by. So I think that should be enough of an advertisement to join in this very interesting work of translation. And as Dhamma Master Sher said before, it's a lot of fun, a lot of times. So I hope you can join the fun.
I'd like to ask you, Feta, how old are you?
I'm 21 years old.
When I think what I was doing when I was 21, it's just too embarrassing. All right. Well, it's after 5 o'clock, and I'm sure people's stomachs are rumbling. There's so much more to say. For example, we have talked about book distribution centers. This is a brand new idea that you're going to be hearing more about. We have many of those original translations in warehouses, in closets, in cupboards, and in boxes, and we're looking for ways to circulate them, and a notion was that we could have a book club. Anybody ever join a book club back in the day when every month you would get a new publication? And we were thinking, what a wonderful idea to have people subscribe, and it doesn't necessarily have to be beyond the mailing fee, the postage. To pay the postage, we would be happy to send you a brand new sutra and commentary, or a new text, or a new MP3, or a new CD or PDF every month. This is an idea. It's been working at Fajie in Jinghui in Taipei for a long time. If we could do that, it would be progress. If we could create book distribution centers in places where there won't be a monastery, for example, let's say Nashville, Tennessee, let's say San Diego, there won't be a monastery, but there are Buddhists, like we heard early in San Francisco, where people got together and want to know more. What a great idea to have people say, we could distribute all your books from there and have a flat panel TV, and when we have this webcast every night from the Buddha Hall at City of 10,000 Buddhas, why not? So Yuan Lin, that's talking to you, Yuan Lin, have a webcast every night from the City of 10,000 Buddhas and have people show up and do Wan Ke together in San Diego or Nashville or Gainesville or New York City. Why not? That's an idea. So we're thinking about that, and stay tuned because there's more to come. Another very important thing that's going on, we heard a little bit about it this morning, is the book distribution effort in China. Through the efforts of Madalena and other volunteers, the Master's Sutras are being published and distributed in Jiantizi, in simplified characters, in China through the Zhongjiao Wenhua Chubanshe, the central government's cultural and religious publishing arm, which it's for profit there, and it's making them money. Our Shifu Sutras are the best sellers in their catalog. And this is going through proper channels. The books are being distributed nationwide, and they can't get enough of them. So how wonderful that Shifu's vow to bring the Dharma back to Asia is actually being realized. Another thing that we're proud of and delighted to say is that the Dharma masters and lay people from Longquansi near Beijing, they're publishing bureau heads of all the different languages. Dharma Master Wu Guang is here, and Layman Jiang is here, leading a delegation of all their translators to come visit the City of 10,000 Buddhas to exchange ideas about translation. They have been very vigorously working with Xuecheng Daheshang, their Shifu, their monk, who is a very prolific writer and commentator, and he speaks the Dharma, teaches the Dharma, writes a blog. They have been translating it into 8 languages. And they're very interested in the work of BTTS to the point where one of our English translations of the Lotus Sutra went back to Longquan Si, and they used it to recite when they had a Lotus Sutra Dharma assembly. So here is a way to bring the world together through looking into the words of the Buddha and the mind of the Buddha through translations. So how wonderful. And also I might say that our ceremonies, the Longquan Si volunteers are very interested in English language ceremonies as well. So who would think that the vows of one pilgrim bringing the Dharma to the West, not knowing how it was going to work, he said, I hope we'll find some young people who will come and help me, he said. Sure enough, it has now led to the Dharma going back to Asia and tying us together, making it a global village. In a time of great international conflict like this, to have the Dharma be a bridge for peace and understanding, this is a very important contribution. So, no apologies for the advertisement. Please come make this your work. Ami Tofo. All right. We need to say that there are some very tireless people who have been speaking into microphones from this early morning until this very minute. You can hear them now. If I don't speak, they don't speak. They're translating into Vietnamese and into Chinese. Thank you. We don't say thank you here. We don't say thank you. We do say Gan En, how grateful we are that people are excited to do this. So in this room, we are bringing the message simultaneously to people who otherwise would not be able to hear what's going on. So their work will continue tonight at 7. Is that what our schedule says? Yes, indeed. 7 to 9, we're going to continue with our session on looking forward, bringing the Dharma into the 21st century. There will be a whole panel of speakers, and we look forward to seeing you here tonight. There will be, what else do we have? Yes. Shoot, here we go. If somebody, are we going to cause you trouble if we pick up my computer again? If you would like to get involved in the work of the Buddhist Text Translation Society, and my computer is not cooperating here. Okay, it's BTTS Volunteers, BTTSvolunteers@gmail.com. It's a brand new email that will be happy to take your interest, and we'll connect you with translators who will let you know how to get involved. So that would be BTTS, Buddhist Text Translation Society Volunteers. One word, BTTSvolunteers@gmail.com. All right, that's the address for getting involved. So, dinner for those who would like it. I think it's time to go right now. Wan Ke will be starting at 6 p.m. And then our session on the future will begin at 7 p.m. We'll see you then. Aum Yi To Fo.